A Christmas Worth Billions. Written by Jacqueline Hardy. Narrated by P.J. Wood. Dedication. For those who need a little help finding the spirit of Christmas. Chapter 1. It was the Christmas season again, and David wanted to forget the whole thing. It reminded him of how much his wife loved everything about the holiday. This would be his first Christmas without her, and it nearly crushed him. The alarm woke him that morning with a jolly Christmas song, and he fumbled for the clock to shut it off. He rolled over and rubbed his face before climbing out of bed. It had been another night full of bad dreams, and he wanted to wipe them out of his mind before heading off to work for the day. David pulled on his sweats, scarf, and running shoes and went out for a jog. The cold air always cleared his head, even if his lungs were burning by the time he was done. He passed the old church and waved at the pastor as he continued on the trail. Moving away from the city had been good for him, close enough to work, but far enough away that he could make a new life for himself. The diner was busy as he passed by, and he waved at his neighbors. They always invited him for dinner, but he'd managed to escape so far. It wasn't that he didn't want to get to know them. He was just hesitant to make new friends in case they asked questions. When David returned home, he turned on the kettle and headed to his bathroom for a hot, steamy shower. The water helped thaw him out and finished wiping away the cobwebs of the night before. The light blinked on his answering machine, so he pushed the button and listened while he poured himself some hot chocolate. "Hey, David, it's Peter. The shareholders are getting antsy. I sure hope you're planning to come in today for the meeting." David shook his head and walked back into his bedroom. He'd forgotten about the meeting, but the threat of losing the company he'd worked so hard to build was enough to get him out of the house and back to the office, a place he'd rarely gone in the last several months. He changed into his suit and straightened his tie. He could do this. The phone rang again, and David let it go to the answering machine. "Hey, David, I haven't seen you at church for a few weeks. I was hoping to meet with you tonight. Have a great day." It had actually been a few months, but David figured he wouldn't correct Reverend Smith. At least that meant he had plans that night. He sent a text back on his cell phone and finished off his hot chocolate. David grabbed his briefcase and headed toward his old Chevy pickup. It took a few tries to get it started up because of the bitter cold. He should have just taken his Mercedes, but it was too conspicuous in this small town. Once the truck was warmed up enough, he pulled out of the driveway and onto the street. He'd chosen the truck because it was the make and model he'd wanted in high school. The trip into the city was slow because of the ice on the ground, but David found himself looking forward to being at work again. He'd heard about some of the changes Peter had made, and he was anxious to see them in action. An hour later, David pulled into the parking garage. He chuckled at the look on the security guard's face when he drove up. "Hey, Dan, how's it going?" David asked. "Never been better. Wow, man, nice truck," Dan laughed. "I didn't realize work was going that poorly." "This was by choice. See you later." David pulled forward and parked in his spot. He paused for a moment before grabbing his briefcase and headed upstairs to his office. His heart beat rapidly as he rode the elevator up to the 15th floor. He wasn't sure how people would react after he'd been gone for so long, and if any of them brought up his wife, he didn't think he could handle it. His employees greeted him with surprise as he walked past them to his desk. The spacious office welcomed him back. He'd spent countless nights here in meetings and on phone calls ever since he'd taken over the company. so many nights that he should have spent with his wife. There was a knock at the door, and Peter poked his head in. "Oh, there you are. I was worried I'd have to tell the shareholders you were gone. Again. Sorry, it was icy out there, or I would have been here sooner." David leaned back in his chair and played with a pen from his desk. "Is everyone here?" "Yes, they're in the conference room." Peter paused. "Listen, you've been gone long enough. I'll have you do the talking." David stood and straightened his suit coat. He probably hadn't needed to wear it, but his dad had taught him to always look his best. It was an old habit. The look of relief on Peter's face was almost comical. "Great, I'll turn things over to you once I'm done." "Perfect." Peter opened the door farther so David could leave the room. "It's good to have you back, David. We've needed you." David didn't say anything as he followed Peter toward the conference room. It irked him not to be in control, but he had to admit it made sense. He'd been gone too long. He was stopped a few times on the way to answer questions, or just so people could say hello. The conference room was full when they walked in. David took a seat near the front, and Peter continued standing. Murmurs went through the room before quieting down. "Welcome to our shareholders. Let's get started now." Peter turned to the PowerPoint. The meeting had taken the entire morning, but it seemed that everyone was happy as they left. "You did great, Peter. I can see I left my company in good hands." David walked out of the conference room with Peter following behind. "Thank you. I must say I'm glad you're here. I can go back to my old job of keeping the press away." Peter stopped to sign for a package and then hurried to catch up. David laughed. "If you insist, I'm sure I could find you a corner office somewhere if you'd prefer. You deserve it." Peter stopped. His jaw dropped. "What? Unless you like that tiny office next to mine. Seriously, you've earned it." David walked into his office and flipped through the charts on his desk. "We have an empty office, right?" Peter leaned against the wall. "You used them all up before you left, remember? You got the new account and gave them all promotions." "Oh, right. Sorry." David sat down and pulled out his laptop. "What if we rented out the floor below us? We could send them downstairs so you could take their office." Peter laughed. "It's taken. I'm fine where I am. Anyway, I'm off to lunch. Are you coming?" "No, I think I'll stay here. I want to look at the numbers from the meeting. Bring me something back?" "Of course." Peter left, and David picked up the folder Peter had left on his desk. The numbers that had been quoted were much higher than David had expected. Clearly, they hadn't missed him much, no matter how many times they said otherwise. He had a few things he wanted to change, but otherwise, he was thrilled. Peter was definitely in need of a raise after everything he'd done in David's absence. By the time Peter got back from lunch, David had approved raises for several of his top employees, and a bonus for Peter as well. It just had to be sent through HR, and he'd announced it the week before Christmas at their annual party. A party he told himself he would skip. Until now. Peter set a bag of Chinese food on David's desk. "Here's your lunch. I'd stay and chat, but I have a few things that need to get done." "That's fine. I have a few things to do as well." David pulled out the contents of the bag and arranged them on the desk. "All right. And David, I'm glad you're back. Sorry for everything that happened." Peter walked to the door, oblivious to the pain that hit David in the stomach. David sighed. "Thanks." It was later than David would have liked when he finally left the office. He shivered as he made his way out to his truck. The brisk winter weather had only gotten colder while he'd been working. The pickup groaned as it started up and lurched as he backed out of the spot. There were few cars still in the garage, like David had hoped. The fewer people he had run into, the better. He couldn't handle even the slightest chance of someone bringing up his wife. It wasn't that Peter had meant to hurt him, but it was still raw. The snow had begun falling again, and David could only see a few feet in front of him as he made his way out of the city. He turned on the radio to keep him alert, but every station played Christmas music, her favorite. David was grateful to pull into the church parking lot at last. He hoped the meeting wouldn't go too long so he could get home. This was the longest he'd been out of the house since he'd moved, and he could feel the anxiety creeping up on him. Warmth washed over him as he walked inside the small church. Candles lined the room, and there were no other people sitting in the pews. "Ah, there you are. I was wondering if you would come." Reverend Smith came forward to shake David's hand and led him into his office. David sat in the chair across from the pastor. "Sorry about that. The snow didn't help much." Reverend Smith laughed. "I can imagine." "So, what did you want to talk to me about?" David shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. "I wanted to see how you were doing. I know you've been out and about to go running, but that's all I've seen. Frankly, David, I'm worried about you. Sarah wouldn't have wanted you to suffer like this." His eyes were sad. David clenched his fists. The Reverend had never even met Sarah, but he'd heard about her not long after David had moved in. He forced himself to calm down and sighed. "I know, I'm trying." He ran his fingers through his hair. "It's hard to get past losing a loved one." The Reverend stared at the desk in front of him. "But if we don't move on, we're not allowing ourselves to heal, and that helps no one." David leaned forward. "You've lost someone?" "Yes, I was married once. She was the love of my life. I let her loss get the best of me, and I became very bitter. It wasn't until I learned that service was the only thing that would help get past the grief I was able to move on. Now I'm able to serve in a capacity I never thought possible." "So you want me to become a pastor?" David asked, his eyebrows raised. Reverend Smith laughed. "No, not unless you want to. But I do think you could find a few ways to serve here." David studied him for a moment. "What do you mean?" Reverend Smith sat back in his chair. "These old knees of mine won't allow me to climb the stairs to the bell tower anymore. I miss the sound, and I would like someone to ring the bells for services every morning. All the instructions are up there, along with several choices of songs. Do you think that's something you could do?" "Do I have to decide right now?" David asked. He knew the Reverend was right, but that meant he'd have to leave his house more often than he had before. "No, just give me an answer on Sunday." David nodded and stood. "Fair enough. I'll get back to you." "Thank you. Merry Christmas, David." The Reverend followed him out of the office. "Merry Christmas." The words were bitter in his mouth. As he turned away, he bumped into a beautiful woman, knocking the money she'd been holding to the ground. He knelt and picked up the few coins to give back to her. Their eyes met, and he was mesmerized by her green eyes. "I'm so sorry." Her smile lit up her face, and the dark circles under her eyes were almost unnoticeable. "It's fine. I should have watched where I was going. I was the one who ran into you. Are you okay?" he asked. "Yes, thank you. If you'll please excuse me, I need to get back to my children." She moved past David and walked over to Reverend Smith. David heard something about tithes as he walked past two children huddled in the doorway. They stared up at him, and he winked. They smiled back before turning away. The snow made it hard to see as David trudged out to his truck and grabbed a brush so he could clean the windshield. Snow had fallen in the few moments he'd been in the church. Before he climbed into the truck, he stared up at the bell tower that stood tall and proud. It was exposed to the elements, and that didn't seem too appealing. But Sarah would have loved the music. David sighed and drove away. Service. It shouldn't have been such a novel concept to him, but he'd been used to doing everything for money. It was how he made his billions. But wasn't that what Sarah had been arguing about in the car that night? He'd become too consumed by money and forgot the little things. The garage door stuck for a bit before finally opening slowly. David parked the truck and walked inside. He left his snowy shoes next to the door and changed into warm pajamas before climbing into bed. He rolled over, picked up his phone, and typed in a few words. "I'll ring the bells for you, and thank you for the opportunity." Chapter 2. Lily woke to the coughs from her oldest, Mary. She climbed out of bed and wrapped her blanket around her shoulders. She'd need to find a way to pay for more gas for the house. It was too cold in here for her children. At least they'd be warm at school the next day. She went into Mary's room and climbed into bed with her. "It's okay, sweetie. Come here." She brushed Mary's hair away from her face. "It's nearly morning." "I'm cold, Mommy." Mary snuggled in closer. "I know." Lily kissed the top of Mary's head. "Just sleep. We'll find a way to warm our house, okay? I'll make this better. Christmas is coming, so people will be out shopping, and they'll need a place to eat." Mary nodded, and soon her breathing slowed. She coughed again, but didn't stir. Lily stared off into the dark, remembering how it had been before. She'd been able to afford whatever Mary and Patrick had wanted, but then things at the diner had gone downhill. Now all of the money was put into paying off store expenses, leaving her nothing to pay bills at home. If they could just get past this cold spell, it wouldn't be so bad. Lily pushed the thought away that it wasn't even Christmas yet. It'd be a long time before winter was over, and so far it had been harsh. If it kept going, they'd have to go to the church to ask for help. It was something that Lily wanted to avoid. She wanted to show she could do this on her own. Her mind drifted back to the man she'd met in the church. She'd seen him jogging past her home a few times, but had never seen him in church. He was handsome, and from the clothes he wore, the rumors were probably true that he was a billionaire, far beyond her league. "Bye. I'll see you two after school." Lily smiled and waved as Mary and Patrick ran into the building. They waved back before disappearing inside. Lily made her way to the family diner and smiled at her customers as she walked to the office to grab her apron. Lily's best friend, Anne, looked up from the note she was writing. "Oh, there you are, Lily. A few bill collectors have called, and I didn't know what to say. I was hoping they'd give us until after Christmas." Lily sighed. This diner had been her grandma's, and Lily had done everything she could to keep it open. "Well, if business keeps going like today, you should be able to pay a few of those bills. Could you help out before you call them back? Spencer called in sick and Cindy hasn't shown up yet," Anne said. "Of course." Lily grabbed her paper and pen and headed toward the first table. "Welcome to Nellie's Diner. May I take your order?" The family rattled off what they wanted, and Lily did her best to keep up. When she read it back, they had to make a few corrections. She loved the diner, but she preferred to stay behind the scenes making the food. She passed the order on to the cook and made her way to the next table, where a young couple sat. They ordered eggs and toast and complimented her on the decorations. The same Christmas decorations that had been used when her grandma owned the place. She didn't have the heart to switch them out. The bell over the door rang, and the man from the church the night before came in. Lily's heart fluttered, and she considered hiding in the back, but she took a deep breath and walked over to the counter. "Hi, what can I do for you?" "Hey, how's it going? I didn't know you work here," he smiled. "I own the diner, but I'm usually in the back." She wanted to check her hair to make sure it wasn't a mess, but she kept her hands on the counter. He was just another customer. Another customer who was extremely good-looking. He sat on the bar stool. I guess that makes sense. Can I get a coffee and some toast? White or wheat?" She wrote down coffee in the notebook. "Surprise me." He rubbed his hands together. Lily smiled and went to the kitchen to fill the order. She prepared the pieces of toast and poured his coffee before heading back to the counter. "Here you go." He laughed. "One white and one wheat. Clever." "Thank you." She nodded and moved on to the next set of customers. She couldn't help noticing that he kept glancing over at her, and she felt her face redden. When he was finished, she walked over and picked up the cash he'd left to pay for his food. Her stomach dropped when she saw the $100 bill wrapped up in the smaller bills. She looked around to find him, but he'd already left. On the receipt he'd written, "Buy something for those beautiful children of yours, David." Lily's eyes filled with tears as she rolled the money up and shoved it in her pocket and put the rest into the register. She wanted to give it back, but Mary and Patrick needed coats. She closed her eyes and said a quick prayer of thanks before moving on to the next customer. She'd pay David back someday. "Are you okay?" the older lady asked. "I'm fine, thank you. Are you ready to order?" Lily got her paper and pen ready. The woman pointed at the pancakes. "I'll have that, and some extra bacon." Her husband closed the menu and handed it to Lily. "I'll have the special with some orange juice." "Great, I'll have that right out to you." She smiled and turned to walk away. "Was it that David character?" "What did he say?" the woman asked. Lily looked back at her in surprise. "You know him?" The woman nodded. "He lives next door to us. Never says much and doesn't get out. I've heard he hasn't been the same since his wife died." "His wife died?" Lily asked, frowning. How awful for him. "Just recently. That's why he moved here." "Edith, that's enough. You don't need to be telling that poor man's life story." The old man shook his head. "Don't mind her. She gets bored sitting inside all day." "It's okay. I'll place your order." Lily smiled to herself as she walked back to the kitchen. She leaned against the wall to get her bearings. Too many things had happened in the last few minutes, and she hadn't been able to process it. She walked over to Anne and pulled out the $100 bill. "Look at what one of the customers left me." She held out the money and the note from David. Anne read it, eyes wide. "I'm thinking the splitting of tips doesn't count here, right?" Lily bit her lip. "Are you sure? It's a lot of money." "You must have made quite an impression on him. He didn't take his eyes off you." Anne smiled. "And he's cute." Lily took a pot of coffee to refill the mugs. Was she the only one in the whole town who didn't know anything about David? She went back to her office and called the collectors to set up payments. They would be willing to wait until after Christmas, but she wondered if she'd even be able to pay then. She went to find Anne, putting on her coat. "Hey, I need to get my kids. I'll be back later." Anne waved and went back to taking orders. Lily clocked out and hurried down the street to the small department store. She couldn't wait to see her children's faces when they saw their new clothes. Usually, they had to wear what clothing she could find, and it was always too small or too big for them. Poor Mary had grown so much in the last month, nothing fit anymore. The choice of clothing was almost overwhelming as she tried to guess what sizes they should be wearing. maybe it would have been better to bring them. She started for the door, deciding to come back later. "Excuse me, can I help you?" a woman asked. She obviously worked there, by the name tag and polo shirt she was wearing. Lily hesitated. She wanted to run, but the woman's smile was kind. "I need coats for my kids, but I don't know their sizes. I'll just come back." "I can help you. How old are they?" the lady asked, walking toward the children's section. "My daughter is 9 and my son is 7. They're both small for their age, but my daughter is going through a growth spurt." Lily watched as the woman rifled through the racks. "I'm guessing they're around these sizes. Do you see one you like?" The woman held up a few. Lily checked the thickness of the coats, along with the prices. "These 2 look good, thank you." Lily clung to the coats and picked up 2 thick pairs of gloves. The woman smiled. "You're welcome. Is there anything else you need? How about a coat for you as well?" Lily could feel her face redden as she shook her head. "I'm fine. I only have enough to get things for my kids." The woman frowned. "It's cold out there. You really should get a warmer coat." "I'm fine, really. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get a few other things." Lily tried to push down the anger and embarrassment, but it was hard. Of course she needed a new coat, but her kids needed these things even more. She grabbed a few pairs of pants from off the display table and hurried to the counter to pay for everything, avoiding the saleslady who had helped her. There was just enough left for some firewood and a few groceries, but Lily would have to wait until later to buy them. Her arms were full, and it was time for her to pick up the kids from school. She jogged the last 2 blocks, hoping the exercise would help boost her body heat. It seemed like the temperature had dropped a few more degrees while she'd been in the store. She coughed and groaned. The last thing she needed right then was to catch her children's cold. The school bell rang and the door opened to let the students pour out onto the lawn. Mary and Patrick followed behind everyone else, but started running when they saw their mom. "Hi, Mom. School was fun today. We got to—" "What's that?" Patrick pointed at the bags in Lily's hands. Lily knelt and set the bags on the ground. She'd been planning to wait until they got home, but with how cold it was, they needed the coats now. "Here you go." Mary's eyes brightened when she saw the thick purple coat. "Wow, these are for us?" "Yes, and I have enough for food and wood for a fire tonight." Lily held out the gloves for each of them and then shoved the empty bag into her pocket. Patrick put his coat on, followed by his gloves. "I feel so warm. Thanks, Mom." "You're welcome." Lily stood. "Let's go get some groceries." The grocery store was decorated with festive streamers and trees, and Christmas music played over the speaker. Lily went through the ad to find the sales before carefully choosing what they could buy. The kids looked hopefully at the candy aisle as they passed, and Lily's heart hurt when she saw their smiles drop as they realized they wouldn't get any. "Hey, we have oranges and some eggs for breakfast tomorrow. That's good, right?" Lily paid for the groceries along with the firewood. Patrick and Mary took the 2 bags of groceries so Lily could carry the wood. She put the bag of clothes in Mary's bag before they left the store. They went to the diner, and Lily had Patrick and Mary sit down in a booth while she went back to pick up their dinners. She'd bring the kids to eat when she needed to close up, and Anne was busy with a Christmas party that night. Her kids did their homework and ate while Lily worked. The crowd was smaller than it had been earlier, but still busier than usual. Families and couples out in their nice clothes, most likely shopping or going to a party. Lily went back to finish up the dishes as it was nearing closing time. She turned off all the lights and made sure they had everything before heading out into the cold. Their trip home was slow because of the weight of their bags and the wood, and Lily could barely feel her fingers by the time they walked in the door. The kids went through the bags and ran to their rooms to try on their new clothes. Lily started a fire before putting away the groceries. She wanted the house to warm up before bedtime. "They fit, Mom, look!" Mary turned in circles, her smile lighting up her face. "They look like the pants my friends wear. Thank you." "You look beautiful. I'm glad they fit." Lily stood and hugged her daughter. "Go grab your pillows and blankets. We'll have a camp out in the living room tonight so we can stay warm." "Yay!" Mary ran back to her room and told Patrick what they were doing. Lily took the blankets off her bed and laid them on the floor, then helped Patrick and Mary lay out theirs. She was the farthest from the fire, but she wanted to make sure they were warm. Mary was coughing more, and she'd heard Patrick sniffling as well. She put on an extra sweater before snuggling into the blankets, feeling warmer than she had for days. Chapter 3. David leaned back in his chair and stretched. The plans for the work Christmas party had all been approved, and he had also finished signing the letters from HR, letting Peter and several other employees know that they'd be getting a pay raise and an extra bonus. Silver Script Ad Agency was doing better than he'd hoped, thanks to a few jewelry ads that had been put together by one of his up-and-coming agents. He wished he'd been the brilliant one to have hired her, but that had been Deborah's idea. Both of them would be getting bonuses along with Peter. It was late when David walked down to his pickup. He'd wanted to stop by the diner again that night, but it would be closed by the time he got home. He stopped at a drive-thru and grabbed a burger instead. Seeing Lily that morning had been a shock, since he'd eaten there a few times and hadn't run into her. It had been a spur-of-the-moment thing to drop the $100 bill with his check, but he'd seen the ragged coats her children had worn the night before, and he'd wanted to be able to help in some way. What good was money if you couldn't share with others? It was something Sarah had asked many times, but David had laughed until now. David pulled into his garage and closed it before heading inside. He got ready for bed and climbed under the covers with his laptop so he could get a few more things done. He would start ringing the church bells the next morning, which meant he'd get to work a little later than he had the last couple of days. A few of the ads needed to be reworked, and he wanted it done just right. David stopped tweaking one of the clothing ads and climbed out of bed to turn up the thermostat. He stared out the window at the falling snow, knowing how much Sarah had loved watching it. Maybe she was the one who'd urged him to leave his work and glance outside. Flashbacks of the last snowstorm in March went through his mind. The ice on the road. The tree coming at them. His wife's screams. He jerked out of his memory and tucked it back into a safe place in his mind, wiping away a tear. He climbed back in bed and pushed his work aside. That could wait until tomorrow. The window was just visible from his bed, and he watched the snow until he drifted off to sleep. The morning was crisp and cool. The snow had stopped sometime during the night, leaving everything bright and new. David found himself whistling as he made his way to the church. Reverend Smith stood just inside and smiled when he saw David. "Ah, you came. Thank you. Come through this way." He led David to the tower. "It's just up there. Most churches have the ropes coming down to the lower level, but this church wasn't built that way. Take the stairs, and the notes on how to ring the bells are in the frame next to the ropes." David glanced at the old rickety stairs and nodded. "Got it." "Are you coming to the service?" Reverend Smith asked. David shook his head. "Not this time. Maybe tomorrow?" He climbed up the stairs and tried to ignore the creaks and groans with each step. He'd need to repair the wood if he was going to do this every day. The instructions for ringing the bells were posted just like the Reverend had said, and David did as he was asked. When he was done, He stared out at the valley that he now considered home. Several people had stopped to look up at the bell tower, so he moved away from the edge. No need to gain extra attention. He climbed back downstairs and nodded to the pastor as he slipped out the back door. The church had already begun filling, and he didn't want to walk through the crowd to leave. A snowplow passed by as David stopped to cross the street. That would make it easier to get into work. He took a step, but hesitated, then turned to go to the diner. He'd skipped breakfast that morning to ring the bells, and he was hungry. He tried to ignore the nagging feeling that he was really going to see the woman from the church. He didn't have time for anyone right then. The diner was quieter than it had been the day before, but there were still a few families. He sat up at the counter again so he wouldn't have to be reminded that he was alone. Lily came out of the kitchen and stopped when she saw him. He watched her straighten her apron before walking toward him. "Fancy seeing you here again," he laughed. She laughed too, and the sound lifted his spirits more than he would have thought was possible. She leaned forward and glanced around before speaking. "You have no idea how much your tip meant to me yesterday. Thank you." David wanted to reach out and wipe the tear from her cheek, but stopped himself. "I'm glad I could help. Your children are beautiful, like their mother." Why had he just said that? He never said things like that, ever. The way Lily stiffened, he knew he'd gone too far. She licked her lips and stood straight. "Thank you. They're my life. Now, what can I get you? Toast again?" David cleared his throat. "Yes, that sounds great. And can you add eggs this time? And maybe some hot chocolate instead of coffee. Lots of whipped cream on top as well, please." "Got it." She turned away, but not before David caught the slight smile on her face. He tapped his fingers to the old Christmas music that played on the radio and waited for his food to be done. The snatches of conversation about how lovely it was to hear the old church bells again warmed David's heart. Maybe it was worth it to continue. Plus, it would give him a great view every morning. "Here you go." Lily sat the plate in front of David, making him jump. "Thank you. This looks amazing," David said. She'd made him the same white and wheat toast that she'd made the day before, and the whipped cream was a good 2 inches above the mug. "I would have added more, but it was starting to tip. Oh, I almost forgot." She reached below the counter, then dropped a cherry on top. "There you go." David popped the cherry in his mouth and enjoyed the burst of flavor. "Do you always keep cherries under the counter?" "Only the ones I use for milkshake toppings." She walked away to take orders from the small family in the corner. David shook his head and took a bite of his eggs. They were so much better than anything he could have made at home. The hot chocolate was perfect as well. Lily was busy with other customers when he was finished, so he paid the other waitress and left. Going to the diner that morning had been just what he needed. The trip to work was a little better than the day before because of the snowplows, but it still took him half an hour longer than he'd wanted. He'd already missed one meeting and had to rush up the stairs to get to the next one. David slipped inside and sat near the back to listen to Erin give her report on the earnings for the month. The ring on her finger sparkled as she brushed some hair behind her ear. She'd not only had a successful campaign, but she'd also walked away with a new fiancé. David hadn't been at work during that time, but Peter had kept him up to date. The sales numbers were higher than they'd anticipated, meaning a higher commission for the company. David clapped with the rest of the group when the presentation was over, and then left for his office. He went through the numbers and found that if they had just a few more weeks with this much success, they would be able to take on more projects. There was a short knock on the door before Peter walked in. "Hey, the invites for the company Christmas party have been sent out. You sure you're up for this?" "No, not at all. Our employees have given us a very successful year, and it's time to thank them for it. I may leave early, but I want to do this." David couldn't help glancing at the picture of Sarah on his desk. "She'd be proud of you." David cleared his throat. "Thanks. It's just too bad it took this long to figure things out." Peter nodded and put his hand on the doorknob. "Same lunch as yesterday?" "I think I'll just have something small. I ate a big breakfast." David turned to his laptop. "Sounds good. I'll be back later." Peter left the office and shut the door behind him. David leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face in frustration. His mind kept going between Sarah and Lily, and it was making him dizzy. Was it so bad that he found Lily attractive? That he wanted to do anything in his power to make her laugh again? It was too soon to even think about anyone else. It was time to get both off his mind and get back to work. He spent the next few hours setting up meetings with the different clients who had called and preparing PowerPoints for the appointments he had the next day. Later that afternoon, he was still buried in work and jumped when Peter knocked and opened the door. "Here you go." Peter set a sandwich and chips on David's desk. "Figured you'd want to eat sometime today, so I grabbed this." "Thanks." David added the mayonnaise and mustard to his sandwich and took a bite. "Oh, man, I didn't realize how hungry I am. Thank you." Peter smirked. "This isn't the first lunch you've skipped. Need anything else before I head out?" "No, I think I have everything pretty much taken care of. Have a good night." David took another bite and wiped his hands on a napkin. "Oh, wait. Could you deliver these to Deborah? They're the new assignments." "Sure." Peter took the files and paused. "You may want to head out soon. Another storm is coming through and traffic is supposed to be pretty nasty." David closed his laptop. "Considering the drive I had to deal with this morning, I'm heading out right now." "Good call." Peter left to deliver the assignments, and David followed soon after, whistling. He made his way to the garage and adjusted the collar on his coat. If the wind blowing through the garage was any indication, he'd be lucky to get over the bridge before the town shut down from the storm. He waved at the parking attendant as he pulled out of the garage and onto the snowy road. The weather had been worse than usual, and he was ready for it to be done. The traffic was crazy as he made his way out of New York. The roads were still clear, but people were driving aggressively as they weaved through the other cars. David's hands gripped the steering wheel as he headed over the bridge. There were several icy spots, so he went slower than the cars around him. Fear clutched his stomach every time his tire slid even a little bit. By the time he made it to his small town, he was shaking and rattled. He pulled into the church and climbed out of his truck. He could have gone home, but he needed to be around people, so the nightmares wouldn't come back. The door to the church creaked open, and he cringed when he heard the organ music inside. He hadn't realized there was anything going on. He just wanted to talk to Reverend Smith about Lily. The pews were empty when he walked farther inside, and he sat on the back bench until the music stopped. "Ah, David, how long have you been here?" Reverend Smith stood from the organ and made his way toward David. "I just got here." David leaned forward and rested his elbows on his knees. "I didn't know you played the organ." Reverend Smith laughed. "I only know a few songs, and I make sure no one is around when I play. Is there something I can do for you?" Now that David was sitting there, he wasn't sure he wanted to say anything. "It's nothing. I can just come later. Is something on your mind? I can only help if you ask for it." David hesitated a moment longer. "Do you know anything about Lily, the woman who brought in her tithes when I was here? What would you like to know about her?" Reverend Smith asked. David could feel his face burn. "I just wondered. I keep running into her, and I'm curious." "Ah, well, she's lived here her whole life. She has a good heart and loves her children dearly. I worry about them, but she won't let me help." He shook his head. "Is there anything else?" "No, that's all." David stood up, embarrassed. He couldn't believe he was even there. "See you in the morning." "See you then." "And David, it's okay that you find her attractive. She's beautiful, and she could use someone with a gentle heart." The pastor smiled at him and walked back to the organ. David listened to the Christmas melody for a moment before leaving the church. The peace he'd hoped for had come, but his heart was more confused than before he'd talked to the Reverend. The storm had settled into the valley, and it blanketed the streets as he made his way home. A movement to the side of his vision made him stop quickly. Someone was out in the storm. They were huddled over in a thin coat and continued forward in the snow. He slowed down and pulled over just as the person collapsed to the ground. David ran to the person's side and rolled them over. His stomach dropped. It was Lily. Her lips were purple, and her skin was ice. He looked around frantically for someone to help. He had no idea where she lived. "Lily! Hey, Lily!" He picked her up, and the jostling seemed to rouse her. He set her inside the truck, cranked up the heater, and then tried again. "Hey, I want to get you home, but I need to know where you live." Her eyes fluttered open, and she tried to speak. She gestured down the street, so he pulled forward. "Tell me when we get close, okay?" He adjusted the other vents in the truck so they faced her. "Where are your kids?" Her mouth formed the word home while she rubbed her arms. She pointed at a small, run-down house, and David pulled into the driveway. An old car sat covered in snow, and lights were on in one of the rooms. Lily tried to open the passenger door, but she was too weak. She lay back against the seat and coughed. "Hold on." David ran around the side of the truck and opened the door, then pulled her out and carried her inside. "I can walk." She coughed again, her whole body shaking. David took the keys from Lily and opened the door to the house. "You can walk, but I don't want you falling again." Lily closed her eyes and leaned her head against him. "Just take me to the living room, please." He carried her into the living room where her son and daughter were sleeping next to the fireplace. The fire had died down, and the room was cold. She climbed out of his arms and curled up next to her daughter. David's heart broke from what he saw. He stoked the fire and got it burning before walking through the other rooms. They were clean and simple, but the blankets and clothes were worn out. More coughing came from the living room, but this time it sounded like it was one of the kids. David searched for tea or something in the cupboards, but they were bare, except a few staples like bread and some oranges. There was so much food at the diner, but she had nothing at all for them here. David left the house and climbed back into his truck. He couldn't let them live like this, and while he hated to leave them, they needed some groceries and some medicine as soon as possible. The old corner store was the only place that was still open, so he pulled in and hurried inside. The Christmas music was upbeat and seemed to jar against what he'd just witnessed. He grabbed a cart and filled it with food, medicine, herbal tea, and milk. There was a small section with gloves and hats, so he picked some out for Lily and her kids. After grabbing a few space heaters, he took the full cart to the front of the store to pay for everything. The cashier's eyebrows rose, but didn't say anything as she rang him up. "Merry Christmas." David nodded and left the store. He set everything in the truck and drove the couple of blocks back to Lily's house. It took a few trips to unload everything, and then he quietly filled the cupboards while water heated up on the stove. Once the tea was brewed, David poured 3 cups and put them on an old tray. He set the tray on the couch and knelt down next to Lily. "Hey, I have something for you to drink. It'll help warm you up." Lily slowly sat up and took the mug from David. "Where did you get this?" "I bought it. I made some for the kids, too. I hope you don't mind." He watched her take a sip and close her eyes. "That is so nice, thank you." She took another sip and set it aside before taking one of the other cups. "I'll help Mary. Will you get Patrick's cup for him?" "Of course." David helped Patrick sit up. "Hey, buddy, I have some tea for you. It'll help your cough." Patrick stared at him with big, sleepy eyes before glancing over at his mom. When she nodded, he took the cup from David and sipped. "What is this?" "It's got some herbs in it that will help you feel better." David turned to look at Lily. "I also bought space heaters if you want some for the bedrooms, unless you like sleeping in here on the floor." Lily smiled weakly. "We were camping out. That's very sweet of you, but I can't afford the electricity for the heat." David raised his eyebrows. "Wow, I'm sorry. I didn't think about that. I can help pay for it, if you'd like. It's cold out there." "You don't have to do that. You've already done so much." Lily watched her children drinking their tea. "Please, it's too cold outside to keep the heaters off." David stood and noticed that the snow was coming down harder. It was going to be fun getting home. He turned away from the window. Lily sighed and nodded. "Thank you." David left the room and turned on the space heaters in each of the rooms. It would take a while to warm the house, but it would get there. He walked into the kitchen and cleaned up the tea packets, then went back to the living room. "Are you all okay?" He sat on the couch and leaned forward. "Much better. You need to get going or you'll never make it home." Lily nodded toward the window. "Thanks again." "Where were you heading? I thought the diner closed a while ago." Lily glanced over at Patrick and Mary. "They needed medicine, so I snuck out while they were sleeping. It was just going to be a couple of minutes, but then the storm hit." "Why didn't you just take your car?" "No money for gas." She looked away. "If you hadn't come when you did." "I'm glad I could help. I didn't see any medicine in the cupboard, so I bought some. It's all in the kitchen, if you'd like me to bring it to you." Lily shook her head. "You've done enough. Go home and get some rest." David walked to the door but hesitated. "Are you sure you're okay?" "Stop worrying. We'll be fine." Lily's laugh turned into a cough. "Okay, but if you need anything, please call me." David set his business card on the table and left the house with a wave. He couldn't help feeling guilty as he pulled out of the driveway and headed for his house. The storm made it hard to see, but he was able to get home without any problems. He pulled out the couple of bags of groceries he'd bought for himself and went inside. The large room seemed to echo as he walked through the house. Maybe he should have gotten something smaller. He was just always used to getting the biggest and the best of everything. Now it seemed foolish. He popped his food into the microwave and started his own tea while he waited. The heater hummed in the background, reminding him of how warm and comfortable the house was. David ate his dinner while watching the news. The storm was supposed to stick around for another day before finally heading out. If it really did keep up, he wouldn't be able to make it to work the next day. He turned off the TV and got ready for bed before turning off the lights. It was an hour later before his mind was able to clear enough for him to fall asleep. David rolled out of bed and changed into shorts and a t-shirt to jog on his treadmill. He would have gone running outside, but it was still cold, and he would already have to be out in the snow to ring the bells for the church. He wanted to go see how Lily was doing, but he needed to get a few things done first. The picture of Sarah stared down at him, which made his thoughts even more uncomfortable. Before, it had been motivation to get him out of bed and make him exercise so he wouldn't be allowed to fall back into the depression that had overwhelmed him. Now it was a constant reminder that he was helping and talking to another woman, someone who had helped awaken him, someone he found very attractive. The timer went off, and David left the treadmill and hopped into the shower. He dressed warmly, but put on his suit coat as well. He didn't want to go into work because of the snow that had fallen, but there was a last-minute snag in one of the accounts. Deborah had assured him through email that Aaron had everything under control, but he had to make sure. The air was frigid when David left his house. The snow had stopped, but the wind blew what was on the ground into large drifts. He walked briskly over to the church and welcomed the warmth inside. "Good morning, David. I'm glad to see you here." Reverend Smith shook his hand. "How was your evening?" David shook his head and sighed. "I found Lily on the ground nearly frozen. After dropping her off at home, I grabbed some supplies for them. I probably should have gotten help, but I was too frazzled. Oh, dear. I'll arrange help for her and then head over after the meeting. Thank you for telling me. Lily is dear to our little community." "You're welcome. I'll probably check on her after work." David opened the door. "Wish me luck." The sound of the pastor's laughter followed David up the stairs. The wind was biting up this high. David pulled on his thick gloves and grasped the rough rope, then rang the bell. He would have loved to watch as everyone came to the service, but his cheeks were already going numb from the cold. He waved to the pastor as he left the church and hurried back to his truck. The drive was smoother than he'd expected, but he knew he'd want to leave early that night to escape the freezing that was bound to happen. Employees nodded or waved at David as he walked past, and he did his best to acknowledge them. He slipped into the meeting just as it started and pulled out his notes. Aaron had put together a presentation on what needed to be fixed and how to go about it. Deborah had been right. Aaron had it under control. At the end, she looked at David. "Sir, is there anything else you'd like to add?" "I think you've covered everything. Well done, Aaron." David turned to the client. "If you go along with these proofs she set out, you'll have a successful advertising campaign. People will be lining up to wear the new clothesline. Now, if no one else has anything, we can be adjourned." He turned to Mr. Carpenter, who shook his head. "We love it. I'd like to start immediately." He wrote something in the notebook in front of him. "Perfect. We'll have you work out those details with Deborah and Aaron then." David shook everyone's hand and walked to his office. He quickly checked his messages and returned a few phone calls. Peter knocked on his office door and came in. "Hey, I didn't think you'd make it to work today. How was the meeting?" "It went well. They loved the ideas." David stood and put his coat on. "I'm heading out now. I wanted to look over a few things for the party before heading home." Peter cleared his throat. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Our PR people cornered me this morning and wanted me to have a talk with you. They seem to think that you need a date for this party. After the drop in stock back in August, people are worried, and they want to know you're doing well." David grumbled. "That was 4 months ago. We've more than made up for it since then. How is seeing me with a date going to help with anything?" "I don't know, but they wouldn't let me go until I agreed to say something." "I know it's too soon, so we can tell them to drop it, but at least I'm doing what they asked." "Thank you." David glanced at the photo on his desk. "I'll think about it." Peter looked at him in surprise. "What?" "It was no secret that I had a rough time after I lost Sarah. It's just a date, and then I can move on." That was easier said than done. The thought of Lily's smile told him that it wouldn't be just a fleeting thing. He just hoped she'd go out with him. "Are you sure? 3 months ago, I couldn't get you out of bed. Last month, the only thing you do is exercise or sit on your couch. What changed?" His eyes widened. "You met someone, didn't you?" David sighed and leaned against his desk. "Yes, but she's a tough one. Someone hurt her, and she's got a wall between herself and the world. She's struggling financially and won't let anyone help." Peter laughed. "A woman who doesn't want your money? Snag her, man. Most of the women who have been sending you emails and letters want you for one thing." I know. She's refreshing in so many ways. She has 2 kids, beautiful little girl and boy who look just like her. With sad eyes, David wanted to do anything he could to make them happy again. Whoa, she has kids? You are serious if you haven't run the other way. Peter opened the door. I have a meeting, but I'll let PR know you have things under control. David followed Peter out and locked his office door before heading down to his truck. Yes, he was serious. He just hoped she would let him into her life. Chapter 4. Lily lay in bed, enjoying the heat from the space heaters David had placed throughout the house. She'd been in and out of sleep for a few days, while people from her congregation watched over her house. She'd been vaguely aware that David had been there, playing with the kids, but she was too weak to get out of bed. Meals had been brought, and the women made sure she got food to eat, then fed the children. Anne had stopped by once or twice to bring bills, or let her know how the diner was doing. This was the first morning Lily felt like getting out of bed. She went into the bathroom to take a hot shower, something she'd been craving for days. She put on some old gray sweats and socks before leaving her room. Patrick and Mary were playing with an old train set Lily had found at a thrift store. Mary jumped up and hugged her mom. "You're awake! I've missed you!" "I've missed you too. Have you been behaving?" Patrick nodded and looked up from the trains. "Reverend Smith wanted you to call when you feel better, and there are lots of notes on our door. They wanted to talk to you, but Mrs. Franklin made them leave." "Okay, thank you, sweetie." Lily pulled the notes off the door and closed her eyes. Final notices for collections weren't the best things to find after being sick for days, but at least she could get it over with. She called Anne to let her know she was alive, then wandered into the kitchen. She opened a cupboard to get a cup so she could take some medicine, but she stopped. Her eyes widened, and tears poured down her cheeks. The shelves were filled with food. Granted, they were filled with things like ramen noodles and soup, but they looked heavenly. She had food to give her children. She located the medicine above the stove and called the kids into the kitchen. "Do you know where all of this came from? Did the church ladies bring it?" She pointed at the cupboards. Patrick shook his head. "It was David. He's filled it a little bit every time." Mary quickly shushed him. "We weren't supposed to tell." "I'm glad Patrick told me. Now, let's get some breakfast in you." Lily couldn't help the small flare of annoyance that David gave them so much, but she pushed it down, and she watched her children talking and laughing while they ate marshmallow cereal. Lily pulled out the accounting books for the diner that Anne brought by and set them out on the table. She had to figure out where she'd get the money for food and other supplies. "Here, Mom, I made this for you." Mary set a bowl of cereal on the table next to the books. "Thank you." She ate while she looked over the numbers. Mary and Patrick helped wash the dishes before running off to their rooms, leaving their mom at the table. The numbers weren't looking good, but she knew that from the note sitting next to her. Lily ran her fingers through her hair. Cutting down the menu items was an option. She could get rid of the steaks and other more expensive cuts of meat and buy the cheaper napkins, but that would only help for so long. In the meantime, the collectors would begin repossessing inventory until she could pay the debts. Mary came into the kitchen with her coat and gloves. "Hey, Mom, can we play in the snow? We'll keep warm." Lily nodded. "Of course. I'll have hot chocolate ready for you when you get done." Patrick cheered and followed Mary outside. Lily could hear them shouting back and forth to each other. She walked through the house and stood at the window to watch them play. A few of the neighbor kids came by with their sleds, and they took turns riding behind a snowmobile. Lily pulled her sweater tighter and went into the kitchen to start the water. She went back through the numbers, hoping to come up with a different solution. But it was looking more and more hopeless. If things didn't pick up soon, they were in big trouble. A knock at the door made Lily jump. She stood and opened it to find David standing there, covered in snow. "What happened to you?" she asked, moving out of the way so he could come in. "Snowball fight? I lost." David laughed and wiped himself off before coming inside. "Your boy knows how to throw. He should play football." Lily smiled. "That's his dream. I was worried when I didn't see you at the diner again this morning. I thought I'd check in on you. I'm feeling much better, thank you. I just don't want anyone to get sick, so I decided to stay home for one more day. What are you doing here? Don't you have work?" Lily poured some hot water into a mug and added the chocolate mix before handing it to David. "Snowed in. Everything is shut down, so I'm working from home today. I just wanted to get out of the house for some breakfast." David stirred his drink and took a sip. "That's really good." Lily nodded. "That's my grandma's recipe. I make sure to keep a jar of it at all times. I like that rule." David took another sip and watched out the window. "Your kids look like they're doing better. Thanks to you." She wiped down the counter, self-conscious. "You saved our lives." David stared at her for a moment. "You scared me. I thought you were gone when I picked you up out of the snow. It's freezing out there. Don't you have a coat?" Lily could feel her face burn as she turned away. "No, everything I get goes toward the diner or the kids. I'll get a coat when we have the money. Don't you realize that without you, there would be no kids and no diner? You have to take care of yourself." David stood. "I can get you a coat." "No." She stopped and took a breath. No need to lose her temper. He was just trying to help. "Thank you for the offer, but you've already given me enough. With groceries and my kids' coats taken care of, I can get myself something with the next paycheck. Never mind, that would be months from now, if ever." David's frustration was evident as he watched the kids outside the window. "Okay, I'm sorry. I probably overstepped my bounds. I just don't want to see you get sick again." Lily's heart softened when he looked at her with his dark brown eyes. How she'd managed to end up with someone so handsome in her kitchen was beyond her. She leaned against the counter. "No, I should be sorry. I was rude. I just can't accept anything else." David smiled at her, but she could still see the hurt in his eyes. "It's fine. I'd better get going. With a day off, I should probably stock up my own pantry." He stopped with his hand on the door. "I was thinking of putting up a Christmas tree tonight. Would you and the kids like to help out? Doing it myself would be a little depressing." "We'd love that, thank you. What time were you thinking?" Lily hadn't had a Christmas tree in the house for years. This would be perfect for her kids. "I'll come and pick you up around 6 o'clock. That is, if I can get out of the driveway." Lily laughed and looked outside. "It doesn't look like it's going to let up any time soon." "No, it doesn't. I guess we'll have to chance it." David stepped outside and picked up a handful of snow, packing it into a ball. "But now, I have to plot my revenge." Patrick ran around the corner just then, and his eyes widened when he saw David standing there. He turned back around and screamed at Mary to run away. David tossed the snowball, and it hit Patrick in the back, knocking him to the ground. With a look of horror, he ran and rolled Patrick over, resulting in a face full of snow. Patrick laughed and took off running again. Lily leaned her head against the cool doorway and coughed into her arm. When it didn't stop, she went inside to get a drink of water. The coughing spell finally passed, so Lily went in search of a blanket to wrap around herself. The kids had been outside long enough that she had to heat the water back up again. She found a few more sweaters to slip on over the one she was wearing and put on a hat, hoping it would be enough to keep the air from chilling her again. She walked outside to silence. Where had they gone? She'd only been inside for a couple of minutes. Panic settled in her stomach, and she ran out to find them. They were her life, and they were gone. The streets were clear of cars because of the snow, and she couldn't see Mary or Patrick anywhere. "Patrick? Mary?" The screen door to the side of the house slammed, and Lily whipped around to see Patrick standing there. "Why are you going through that door?" Lily knew she sounded shrill, but her heart was still beating rapidly. Patrick held up a carrot. "We're building a snowman, and I needed the nose." Relief flowed through her. "Why aren't you out here in front?" "That's where I left you." "We needed more snow." He pointed toward a trail in the snow that led to the side of the house. Lily followed him around to find Mary and David waiting for them. They had built a huge snowman on the side of the house. Patrick carefully inserted the nose in the face, and David added arms. Mary pushed the buttons in and then set her stocking cap on its head. "There! We're done! It's great! And huge! How did you get it so big?" Lily coughed and pulled the blanket closer. Patrick hit his gloves together to get the snow off. "Each of us took a ball until they got too big. Then we all helped." "Okay, kids, let's get you back inside. I have it on good authority that your mom made some hot chocolate. Then you can come help me pick out a Christmas tree." David looked up at Lily with a questioning glance. The plan had been to go over later that night, not to pick out the tree. But how could she say no with his eyes dancing like that? She smiled, put her arms around her cheering children, and guided them into the house. "You coming?" "Of course." He pulled Patrick up onto his shoulders and walked next to Lily. "You're sure you're okay with helping to pick out the tree? I should have asked first." "It's fine. They've never been able to do that before." She stopped at the door and opened it, letting Mary in before looking up at him. "Thank you. You're welcome. Like I said, you're helping me, too." He set Patrick down, then pulled out the mugs and poured the water, while Lily took the snowy clothes off Patrick and Mary. Lily took the jar down from the cupboard and scooped powder into the mugs, then added spoons. She handed one to David, and then set the others in front of Mary and Patrick. "Where are we going to get the tree?" Patrick asked, wiping hot chocolate off his face. "Well, I used to go out into the woods to pick the perfect one, but since you've all been sick, I figure we can try the Christmas tree farm just outside of town." "What's a Christmas tree farm?" Mary asked. "It's a big farm filled with trees where you can pick out your favorite one to take home. Why don't you two hurry and get your warmest clothes on, and we'll go." Lily ruffled Patrick's hair and picked up the mugs to put into the sink. She put water into each of the cups to soak and turned to see David watching her. "Are you sure you're okay with going outside? I don't want you to get even sicker." Lily sat down across from David and put her hand on his. "If I get tired, I'll sit in the car. This means the world to my kids, and I wouldn't miss it." David left his hand under hers for a moment before pulling away, looking uncomfortable. He cleared his throat. "That sounds good. I'll go make sure they're ready." Lily stood just as Patrick and Mary came bounding into the kitchen. "Ready," Mary announced. She held out Lily's old coat and a worn pair of gloves. "Here, I brought these for you." "Thanks, sweetie." Lily kissed Mary's forehead and slid the coat on. Patrick held out her stocking cap. "I think that's it." David opened the door. "We'll have to squish inside my truck. I'd take my other car, but it doesn't have four-wheel drive." "This is perfect." Lily grabbed her blanket and locked her door before climbing in next to Mary. David closed the door and ran around to the other side. Lily rubbed her hands together, wishing she'd brought another blanket with her. The cold seemed to go right through her jacket. They drove through town and stopped at a new, rather large house. David hesitated before turning to Lily. "I'll be right back. I need to grab something." "Okay." Lily watched him run inside. She'd walked past these newer homes many times, but had never been this close. "Whoa! This is his house?" Patrick asked, his eyes wide. "He must be rich." Lily laughed. "He is very rich. He owns a huge company in New York City." "Whoa!" Patrick whispered. David came out with a black fur coat and climbed in the truck. His eyes were slightly red and swollen when he handed the coat over, but he smiled. "You can borrow this for today if you want. It'll keep you warm." Lily took the coat from him, amazed at the softness of the fur. She could feel the warmth as she laid it on her lap. She wanted to hand it back, but she had to admit she was freezing. "Thank you." "You're welcome." David swallowed hard and pulled out of his driveway. "Okay, who's ready to go get a tree?" The kids cheered as they left the small town behind them. The storm had lightened up enough that they were able to enjoy the drive. Plows had been through, but there was still packed snow on the ground. Mary and Patrick talked nonstop about school, what they wanted for Christmas, and how cool it would be to sled down the hills. It allowed Lily to stare out the window at the scenery around them. She hadn't been out of the city for so long because it cost too much money to license her car, let alone paying for the gas to run it. And it felt good to get out. They pulled up to a farm and parked next to the entrance. Lily climbed out and slipped the coat on. It was heavier than anything she'd worn before. The sleeves fit perfectly, and the coat hung down to her knees. David pulled the hood up onto her head. "Thank you. Wow, I think I could survive Antarctica in this thing." Lily made sure everyone else was wearing their gloves before they walked into the farm. The lot was packed full of several different varieties of pine trees. She watched Mary and Patrick dart from tree to tree, trying to find the perfect one. "So, were you a fake tree or real tree person growing up?" David asked. He stood close to Lily, and it was hard for her to concentrate on anything, including breathing. "Fake. An old pink one that had tinsel hanging off of it. It's been passed down ever since artificial trees were invented, I'm pretty sure. My mom didn't have the heart to get rid of it, so we just kept on using it." David laughed. "So where is it now?" "In the attic, where it belongs. The kids and I used it a few times, but it's falling apart." Lily searched for Patrick and found him next to a large fir tree. "I think Patrick found one he loves." "Looks like it." David followed Lily over to the tree. "Wow, this is a beauty." "I want to get this one. It's so big." Patrick's grin melted Lily's heart. Lily looked at the price tag. There was no way she'd let David spend that much on a tree. "Sweetie, this one is too much, I think." Patrick's face fell. "Okay." "It's okay, Lily. It would look perfect in the family room." David walked around it. "I might have to get more ornaments, though." "It's fine if you want to pick a smaller one." Lily avoided the disappointment on Patrick's face and searched for another one. Mary was looking at a small tree that was just a little taller than her. Lily walked over and put her hand on Mary's shoulder. "How pretty." Mary nodded. "Can we have this one?" "What do you think, David?" She turned to find him missing. "Where'd he go?" "I don't know. Look, though, the price is good, and the note says they don't drop needles as much as some of the others." Mary held out the note for Lily to read. Lily read the note, impressed at the work Mary had put into finding one. "We can ask David when we find him." "Speaking of which, do you know where Patrick is?" Mary nodded over to the far corner, where Patrick sat in the snow with his head buried in his arms. Lily walked over to him and knelt down. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I just wanted that tree. It was the best one they had, and I thought it would look good in David's ginormous house." Patrick sniffled. Lily patted his shoulder. "I know, sweetie. I'm sorry. It's just—" "Wait. Look what David's doing." Patrick looked up, and his eyes grew wide. "We're getting it?" "It looks like it. Let's go help get it in the truck, okay?" Lily stood and watched as Patrick ran toward David, but she took her time. The energy she'd had that morning had worn off, and she was feeling weaker than she cared to admit. Mary took her hand. and they walked out to the truck. Lily helped the kids into the truck and watched as the farmers brought not one, but both of the trees and secured them into the bed of the truck. David really needed to stop spoiling her kids. It would get their hopes up, and then he'd leave. They always did. She wanted him to be different, but there was just no knowing. After thanking the farmers, Lily and David climbed in and headed toward his house. The cab was louder than it had been on the way to the farm, and that was saying something. Lily was surprised at David's patience with the giggles and yelling. It would have set other guys on edge. They pulled into the local department store, and David turned off the truck. "I need to grab some more decorations along with a few other things." "Okay." Lily headed into the store. "Let's split this up. What else do you need?" David studied Lily for a moment. "I'm sorry, I should have realized you'd be worn out. I can take you back to the house if you'd like." Lily shook her head. "I'm fine. I just need to sit down soon." "Want me to grab the decorations or something else?" "Why don't you and the kids pick some good ornaments, and I'll grab some stuff for dinner. I'll meet you by the decorations when I'm done. Do you have any specific theme or colors in mind?" David shook his head. "No, I'm good with whatever you choose. Oh, and can you grab a star? My other one broke." "We can do that." Lily walked over to the Christmas decorations and stared at the vast number of ornaments they had to choose from. "Whoa, where do we even start?" Patrick pointed at the lights. "We need lots of those. Let's do blue. Then we need some of these." Mary pulled down a box of ornaments. "I like the red and gold. What do you think?" Lily checked the price before she set the ornaments in her cart and walked along the aisle. Even if it was David's money, she still had a hard time paying a lot for the decorations. That would be good for the big tree. What if we did fun ornaments on the small tree? "Like these?" Mary found some rubber duck ornaments. "Or these?" She held up some glittery bows and reindeer. What do you think, Patrick?" Lily asked. "We need some footballs, like these." He held up a package. Lily laughed. "Okay, fine. Oh, we need a star." Mary walked farther down the aisle and stopped in front of the stars. "This one will look good with the small tree." The star had colored lights, and it was a little on the tacky side. But Patrick seemed to like it too, so she let them get it. She searched for the perfect star for the big one. The variety was pretty big, but there weren't many gold stars. She found a larger one that was shiny enough that it showed her reflection. She pulled it off the shelf to examine it. The price was reasonable, and it matched the other decorations. "Pretty. Let's get that one." Mary took it from Lily and put it in the cart. "Lily?" a voice asked from behind. She turned to find Anne standing there. "Oh, hey, Anne, how are you doing?" she asked, fully aware of the ornaments filling the cart behind her. Anne glanced between it and Lily's kids standing next to her. "I'm glad to see you out and about. You really had everyone worried." "I'm glad to be up. We're just here helping pick out some stuff to decorate a tree." Lily could feel her face burning. "I see that. You must have quite the tree." She stopped, and her eyes grew wide when David walked up beside them. "Oh." David set the items he'd picked out in the cart. "Oh, hey, you work at the diner, right?" Anne nodded and held out her hand. "I should actually be there now, but it's pretty slow and we needed a couple of things. Haley has it under control for the moment." "I'm Anne." "You're David. I know. I mean, we all know. I'm going to go now." Anne backed up. "Lily, can you call me? I need to go over tomorrow's menu with you." "Sure, I'll call later tonight." Lily tried not to laugh out loud. She was pretty sure Anne didn't want to talk menu items, and she couldn't help the giddiness she felt inside. It had been a while since she'd had a man in her life. Anne walked away and David turned to Lily. "What was that all about?" "Nothing. She just saw me filling the cart and wanted to know how I was." She gestured toward the ornaments. "What do you think? We might have gone a bit overboard." David lifted up a few of the boxes and smiled. These are perfect. They'll accent the ones I already have really well. Great. I was hoping they wouldn't clash. Lily pushed the cart toward the front of the store. She could have let David do it, but she was exhausted, and the cart was holding her up. They paid for the items and headed out to the truck. David stuck everything behind the seat before having them climb in. He had to drive slowly because the roads were getting icy from the cold, but they finally got back to his house. The kids took the groceries and decorations in, while David pulled the tree out of the truck and tried taking it in by himself. "I can help, you know." Lily grabbed on to the bottom of the tree, careful not to get any sap on the fur coat. "I didn't want you to wear yourself out. I feel bad enough already." He walked up the steps into the house. Lily had branches surrounding her while she carried the tree, but from what she could see, the house was beautiful. It was definitely decorated by a man, but it was well done. She still wondered what had happened with his wife, but didn't want to ask. "Okay, let's put it here." He waited for Lily to set her side down and then did the same. "I have the stand somewhere in the attic. I'll be right back. You guys, make yourself at home." "Thank you." Lily pulled off her coat and sat on the couch. Patrick and Mary sat close to her and looked around the room with big eyes. When Lily was rested, she stood to look at the pictures on the mantel. His wife was beautiful. She had long blonde hair, and her smile lit up her face. Awards for his company lined the walls, and pictures of different magazine ads were framed alongside the awards. Some of the businesses she recognized. She knew he was super rich, but she hadn't heard what he actually did for work. "Found it." David came back in the room and knelt next to the tree. It was buried. "Oh, good. We would have been in trouble without it." Lily knelt next to him and helped secure the tree in the stand. Then they stood it up. David stood back to inspect it. "I like it right here in the center of the room. Makes it easy to notice, right? It looks good." Lily sat down to rest. "What's next?" "I'm thinking you're going to take a nap on the couch while Mary and Patrick help me with dinner." He glanced over at them. "How does that sound?" "Yeah!" Patrick shouted. Mary nodded, and they both followed him into the kitchen. Lily took one of the pillows from the couch and lay down on it, then slipped off her shoes and curled up in a ball. She used the coat she'd borrowed as a blanket and closed her eyes. The room was quiet, but she could hear laughter and the banging of pots and pans coming from the kitchen, and it helped lull her to sleep. Chapter 5. David finished up the pasta and turned around to find Mary and Patrick watching him from the counter. "All done with the salad?" He set the pot on the table. Mary nodded. "Yep." "Oh, good. Why don't you go wake your mom and I'll finish setting the table." He smiled as they ran out of the room. They had been fun to teach. It had been so long since he'd cooked for anyone but himself. He had wanted to make something special. Sarah had loved his food, but he'd become so caught up in making his agency succeed that he'd stopped cooking for her. A couple of minutes later, Mary and Patrick came back in the room, with Lily following behind. She yawned as she sat at the table. Her eyes lit up when she saw the pasta. "Wow, this looks and smells amazing." She smiled up at him. "Thanks again. I'm sorry I wasn't much help." "Don't worry about it. Besides, I had 2 great helpers." David sat and served the food while Mary handed the plates to each person. Then he said the blessing before they began eating. The taste was almost perfect, but he was missing a little rosemary. He'd have to remember to use more of it next time. He set down his fork to butter a piece of bread, then realized the others were staring at him. "What?" he asked. "You were lost in thought." Lily laughed. "I was saying, this is fantastic. Where did you learn to cook?" David wiped his mouth with a napkin. "My mom was a gourmet chef, and she taught me when I was young. It's what I would have done if I hadn't followed my dad's footsteps into advertising." "Well, she should be proud." Lily took another bite and nodded toward Mary. She's eaten more tonight than I've seen her eat in months." Mary blushed. "I'm glad you like it." David finished what was on his plate and dished up seconds for the kids before standing to take the pot to the sink. Lily joined him and put her hand on his arm. "Let me do it. You made dinner." David wanted to argue, but he recognized the stubbornness in her eyes. He nodded. "Okay, I'll get the decorations and we can start when you're done. Sound good?" "Perfect." She turned to the dishes and David climbed up into the attic. He brushed past the old trunks that held Sarah's clothes and moved a few boxes to find the decorations. The tree stand had been easy to find, but he'd hidden everything else when he moved. He hadn't planned on celebrating this year. Sarah had several boxes of decorations, so it would take a few trips, but it gave David time to think. What in the world was he doing? She'd only been gone for a few months, and now he had another woman here with her 2 beautiful children. Even more than that, it had been him planning the whole thing, and Lily had just kind of gone along with it. A picture of Sarah caught his eye as he walked past, and he wondered if that smile was approving or if she was angry. David shook his head. It was just a picture. "Oh, there you are. We thought you got lost." Patrick scratched his head and looked up at the box in David's hands. "What is that?" "Ornaments. There are a few more boxes. Want to help?" David set down the box and wiped his hands. "Where are they?" Patrick asked hesitantly. David gestured for him to follow, and Patrick came, followed by Mary. "They're in the attic." "Are there ghosts up there or spiders?" Mary whispered. "Nope, just boxes." He pulled down the steps again. "They're all the way to the back, so I'll grab them and then hand them down." Patrick nodded, eyeing the ladder suspiciously. "It's safe?" "Of course." David climbed up and grabbed a few boxes to give Mary and Patrick. He found others while they dropped them off and came back for more. David picked up the last box, hesitant to let anyone else touch it. Inside was a nativity that had been passed down through his family. He talked of getting a new one several times, but that one nativity was always the center of attention. He climbed down the stairs and folded them back up. "I'll take this one. Let's go see if your mom is ready to decorate." Patrick turned and ran down the hallway, calling for his mom. David and Mary entered the room to find Lily sitting on the floor, sorting through the decorations. David wanted to brush the loose strand of hair from her face. She looked up from what she was doing. "Sorry, I was just looking through to find decorations my kids could help with. I should have asked." She put the star she was holding back in the box. "It's fine." He set the nativity down on the table and pulled out a box. "Let's start with the garland and go from there." He handed Mary the end. Once the garland and the lights were strung on the tree, they started on the ornaments. It was good that they had bought more because David's only made it through part of one side of the tree. They filled out the rest and stood back to admire their work. "We forgot the star." Mary picked it up and handed it to David. "Right." He picked Patrick up and held him as high as he could. Patrick set the star on top and plugged it into the rest of the lights. "Okay, let's see how it works." Lily turned off the lights in the room, and David plugged in the tree. The lights glowed brightly in the darkness and reflected off the ornaments surrounding them. David moved to put his arm around Lily, but felt her stiffen, so he dropped his arm to his side, cursing himself. A moment later, Lily took his hand and squeezed it before turning the lights back on. David felt the touch of her hand long after, as they moved around the house, decorating it with more garland, lights, stockings, and finally, the nativity. He had a nook near the entryway that was lit, and he knew it was the perfect place for it. The room was quiet as he arranged the pieces as he had so many times before. "This is beautiful," Lily said quietly. "Thank you. I have about 5 others, but this is my favorite." David stood back and admired it, visions from past Christmases when he'd put this together as a child. Okay, who's up for some eggnog? The kids cheered and ran for the kitchen, and David turned to Lily. Thank you. I wouldn't have pulled this stuff out without you. Lily smiled. It's hard to move on, isn't it? David cleared his throat, blinking back the sudden tears. Harder than anything I've ever done. When did it happen? If you don't mind me asking. Lily folded her arms, almost hugging herself. March. Coming home from a work party, I didn't see the ice. Excuse me. David walked into his bathroom and locked the door, overcome with emotion. Talking about it with Reverend Smith was one thing. Talking about Sarah with this beautiful woman felt like he was betraying the love of his life. He stared at himself in the mirror, then washed his face with cold water. He needed to collect himself and get back out there. Lily hadn't meant anything by asking, and he'd caught the look of regret as he turned away. Lily was in the kitchen when he came back out, making the eggnog. She silently handed him a cup and took a drink of hers. Sorry about that. It's still sensitive. He took a drink and stopped, surprised at the taste. Is that ice cream in there? Family secret. She smiled over her mug. Patrick held out his cup. Can I have more? The night was freezing when they left the warmth of the mansion and ran for the truck. Lily stopped suddenly. We forgot the other tree, she laughed and began unstrapping it. David put his hand on hers. This one isn't for here. She looked up at him with raised eyebrows. What does that mean? Climb in. David walked around to the other side of the truck. I couldn't really have two trees, right? Lily looked over at him in surprise. What do you mean? David grinned. You'll see. They pulled out onto the snowy street and slowly made their way back to Lily's house. David watched the road closely, looking for any possible ice. As they passed by the church, he looked up at the bell tower. He was amazed at the changes that had taken place since he started ringing it just days before. Lily's driveway was covered in snow when they pulled in. David climbed out and untied the tree before following them inside. He stomped his feet to clear off the snow, then headed for their living room. Okay, where do you want it? David set the tree down and waited for Lily to choose. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she pointed to a corner. You shouldn't have done this. We have no way to pay you for it. David studied her for a moment before moving the tree where she wanted it. He spent a few minutes attaching the stand he'd bought at the store earlier and then stood it up. I didn't have to, but I could see how much Mary liked it, and I knew it needed to be here. He smiled and went back outside to get the ornaments they'd picked out for this tree. They hung up the decorations, and David sat on the couch while the kids sat on the floor in front of the tree. The smile on Mary's face was priceless as she stared up at the lights. Lily sat next to David, but stayed silent. David could tell she was angry by the set of her shoulders, but she didn't say anything. When it stayed silent for a few more minutes, he stood and ruffled the children's hair before leaving the house. He knew he'd probably gone overboard, but he couldn't help it. He drove home, consumed with sadness. He tried to make Lily happy, but had overstepped his bounds. Again. He stopped in front of the church and stared at the stained glass for several minutes, wondering what he'd been thinking when he let someone else in his life. It had been a mistake. As he pulled into his garage and went inside, he decided that maybe it was time to back off. He still hadn't asked her to the party, and there was still time to find a different date by that weekend. Except that as he closed his eyes that night, it wasn't Sarah who greeted him. It was Lily. Her smile was enough to make him relax, and he drifted off. Chapter 6. Lily thumped the coffee pot down on the counter and grumbled under her breath. The diner had one patron, and they'd only ordered coffee. She set the pot on the coffee maker and went back to the kitchen to compose herself. "Bad date last night?" Anne asked, eyebrow raised. Lily shook her head. "It was perfect until I ruined it. The guy bought me a Christmas tree. The nerve of him! I'm not sure you can handle it." Anne rolled her eyes. "Lily, he's David Fleshman, for crying out loud. Every woman in the country would die to go on a date with him." Lily sighed and grabbed a rag to wash what few dishes there were in the sink. "I know. I just hate having him give me everything. I was doing just fine without him." Anne took Lily by the arm and turned her around. She held on to both shoulders and stared into Lily's eyes. "You weren't okay. You're not okay right now. He literally saved your life. Don't you think he deserves more of a chance?" Lily bit her lip before finally nodding. "I just don't want to mess it up." "I think you already did. Now, when he comes in for his next cup of hot chocolate and toast, because you know he will, you will tell him thank you, and you will let him into your life. Got it?" Anne's eyes searched hers. "Got it." Lily turned away and scrubbed a pan. "So, what are your plans for the night?" "Martin's coming to pick me up, and we're going ice skating with his family. You?" Anne dried the pan and set it on the shelf. "I'll probably hang out with the kids. They were going to make each other gifts this year, so I'll need to help out." Anne nodded toward the front door. "Maybe you should make better plans." Lily followed her gaze to see that David had just come in. He wiped the snow out of his hair and stomped on the rug before taking his place at the bar. She turned to Anne. "You go serve him." "No, he needs to talk to you." Anne grabbed Lily's arm. "Hey, I'm your boss. You have to listen to me." Lily tried to hand her the paper and pen, but Anne pushed her toward the front. "I'm your best friend, and I'm preventing you from doing something stupid. Go." She shoved Lily out of the kitchen. Lily straightened her apron and glared at Anne before walking over to David. She knew her best friend was right, but it didn't make things any easier. She'd really messed things up the night before. "Good morning. Would you like the usual?" Lily smiled at him nervously. "Sounds perfect." David handed her the menu. "I'll have it to go. I need to get to the office." Lily nodded and turned away. She poured a mug of hot chocolate and topped it off with a large helping of whipping cream, then took the plate of toast from Anne. "Thank you." "Welcome." Anne grinned and headed out to take an order from an older couple who had just come in. Lily packed the toast into a bag and took the food out to David. "Sorry, I was going to put your hot chocolate in a cup, but then I couldn't add all the whipped cream." David chuckled. "Fair enough. Thank you." "Here you go. You can pay as soon as you're done." Lily set the check down, her face red as she turned to leave. She wanted so much just to give him the food after everything he'd done, but knew she couldn't afford it. "And I'm sorry about last night. I'm thankful for the tree." "It's fine, really. I should have asked instead of assuming." David shook his head. Sighing, Lily put her hand on David's. "It meant a lot. That's all the kids talked about this morning when we woke up." "Lily, wait." David paused. "I was wondering if you'd like to go to my work Christmas party. I need a date, and I'd love for you to come." Lily stared at him with her mouth slightly open. What should she say? How could she say anything? His company was huge, and she was nowhere near glamorous enough for something like that. She shook her head to clear it. Wow, I want to, but I don't have anything to wear." David nodded. "I understand, but I'm working with a clothing company right now, and I think they'd love to have you show up in one of their dresses. It's good business for them. Please?" Lily glanced over at Anne, who smiled and nodded. "Sure. When is it?" "Saturday. Will that work?" David finished off his drink and stood. Lily bit her lip. I need to find a babysitter, but I think I can make it work. David's eyes lit up when he grinned. Great. I'll pick you up earlier in the day so we can find you something to wear. For now, I better take off, meetings and all that. Lily watched David go in stunned silence. She was about to go to a party with a guy who probably made more money in a week than she'd made in a lifetime. She went back to the kitchen to collect her thoughts and was soon joined by a shrieking Anne. I can't believe you're going to his party. I've heard all kinds of stories about this party from my friend who works at the reception center he reserved. It's supposed to have caterers and acrobats, and they're giving out gifts to everyone, and you're going as his date, Anne squealed again. Yes, and I have no clue what to do with my kids. Lily felt lightheaded and leaned against the counter. What had she just done? Anne waved off her concern. You know they can hang out at my house. You're doing this. It's time to get out of your shell and go. Lily knew she was right, but the thought of it made her want to curl up in a ball. She hadn't been on a date for years. Well, not counting the time she'd been with David over the last few days. Fine, I'll do it, but I'm not going to enjoy it. Yeah, right. Anne laughed and took the coffee pot out to a couple who had just come into the diner. Lily was grateful for the few people who trickled in during lunch. She treated them to a piece of the cake she baked when no one had come in during the morning hours. It probably wasn't wise when she was already hurting financially, but it was Christmas, and she needed something to do. The bell over the door rang, and she heard Mary and Patrick's voices. They ran around the corner and wrapped her in a hug, the cold that had clung to their coats soaked into her. Hey, how was the activity? The church had put on a Christmas party for the children in the congregation after school that day. Anne had gone to run errands and offered to pick them up on the way back. It was fun. Reverend Smith had a few of us act out the nativity. I got to be Mary. Mary's eyes were bright as she looked up at her mom. Lily hugged her tightly. That's wonderful. What about you, Patrick? I was a shepherd. I got to hold one of the hooks. Patrick opened the fridge and pulled out some milk. Reverend Smith asked how you were doing today. What did you tell him? She was supposed to meet with him the night before, but had forgotten in the excitement of getting the tree. Patrick carefully poured a cup of milk and took a drink before turning back to her. I told him that you were good because David's taking care of us. Lily's eyes widened. You told him that? He shrugged. Well, he is. Yes, but you don't have to tell the world that. People will think we're dating or something. Lily turned to the sink and washed Patrick's cup. You're not? Mary asked. Hannah told me that her sister has gone out with a boy 4 times, and now they're boyfriend and girlfriend. That's what you've done with David. Right. Well, you two have been with us, so we'll just call them outings. Mary rolled her eyes. They're still dates. Oh, Hannah's mom wants us to go over for ice cream on Saturday night. Lily grimaced as she pulled out the ingredients for another cake. With no customers at the moment, she'd have time to bake for that night's crowd. I'll be gone, and you'll be with Anne. Maybe she can take you over for a bit. Where are you going? Mary asked, surprised. To a party with David. She turned away and measured some sugar to dump into the bowl. Mary squealed. See, I knew you two were dating. What kind of party? A work party, and don't squeal. You just scared the whole diner. She tried to glare, but her smile crept through. Knowing Mary was okay with it made the party that much more exciting. There's no one here. Patrick helped dump in the flour while Mary measured out the vanilla. Can I go to Seth's house? Of course, as long as his mom is okay with it. Lily turned on the mixer and watched the ingredients blend together. Patrick pulled his coat back on. I'll come back for dinner. Are you coming, Mary? Mary blushed but nodded and followed him. She'd had a crush on Seth's brother for years. Lily chuckled as she dumped the batter into the cake pan and wiped the edges of the bowl. She set the pan in the oven and set the timer. Next, she started on some cupcakes. Anne came in the kitchen and stopped short before joining in. She grabbed some tins and put the little papers in each muffin spot. "You've been baking all day. Is there a party tonight I don't know about?" Anne asked. "No, just hoping to entice people into coming." Lily stopped stirring and turned to Anne. "I don't know how much longer we can do this." Anne didn't say anything for a moment. "I know. I've been praying something would happen, but so far there are no miracles popping out of the woodwork." Lily grimaced. She'd hoped to keep up the act for at least a little longer. "We've survived for generations, and now I'm the one who let it fail." "That's not true, and you know it. I've seen you go hungry just so you could buy a few more supplies. It's these people who aren't coming. Not that I can blame them. Business has been hard on all of us." Anne set the pan by Lily and moved on to the next one. "You're right, as always. But I just want this icon to stick around." Lily dumped the batter into the tins and wiped her hands. The bell on the door dinged, and Anne left to take the order. She returned a couple of minutes later with a frown. "You're needed out there." Lily gave her a questioning look and walked out to find two men standing there in long coats and holding an envelope. "Miss Johnson?" one of the men asked. "Yes?" Lily's heart was pounding as she moved closer. She had been afraid it would get to this point. The man handed her the letter. "We have come to inform that unless you can pay by the end of next week, we'll have to close down your diner. We know that you asked for the end of the month, but our employers have moved up the date. I'm sorry." Lily took the letter and nodded. "I understand. Thank you." The man tipped his hat, and they left. Lily dropped into a chair and laid her head on her arms. Sobs racked her body, and she was glad her kids had gone to play when they did. When she was finally able to calm herself, she stood and wiped her eyes, then took the letter into her office. One thing her parents had taught her was never to give up, and she wasn't going quietly. She tapped her pen on the desk as she tried to come up with a few ideas to make this diner irresistible to the people walking by. Most were old friends who had been coming for years, but like Anne had said, business was slow for everyone. Thoughts of asking David for help with advertising were quickly smothered. He probably cost a fortune, and there was no way she would ask for a favor after how she'd treated him. The menu had changed a little over the years. Maybe if she brought back some of the classics and added a few new dishes, it could help. At that point, it was her only choice. "Anne, could you come here?" Lily wrote out a list of items. "I want you to grab these things. We're going to try to earn at least enough to pay off what debts we have. That way, when I sell this place, I can use the profits to help my kids until I find something else. This is the Lily I know and love. You're good until I get back?" Anne put on her coat and stuffed the list in her pocket. Lily laughed. "Yeah, I think I'll be just fine." Anne left, and Lily pulled out her paint. She wrote out the specials on the front windows and decorated the other windows in Christmas scenes. Her arms ached by the time she was done, but she hoped it would do the trick. After washing her hands, she pulled out the roast she'd been saving and set them on the counter to defrost. She sent a quick text to a friend who worked for the radio station nearby, and another to her friends at the local paper, hoping they'd do her a favor. The door opened, and Lily could hear people talking, so she left the kitchen. A few groups of people stood in the entry. "Welcome. Table for two?" she asked, then led them to a table. She sat another small family and a group of high school kids. Lily made sure the Christmas music was playing in the background and went to grab more menus. She took the orders and hurried to the kitchen to fill them. Of course, she would have to send Anne off just before the dinner rush. It was good she'd only written the menu items she already made. She threw some noodles into the boiling water on the stove and poured sauce over the chicken just before putting it into the warming oven. Mary and Patrick came bounding around the corner a few minutes later. "Hi, Mom. There are lots of people. Do you need help?" Mary grabbed one of the orders from the counter and started dishing out in between, telling Patrick what to do next. Lily could have hugged her right then if her arms weren't loaded with plates. Lily took the first of the dishes out to the waiting tables and hurried back into the kitchen to grab drinks. "Here, Patrick, take those out to table 4. That's the one in the corner by the Christmas tree." Mary took out 2 orders while Lily plated the pasta. She set it on the table of a young family just as Anne walked through the door while her arms full of bags. Her eyes widened, and she bustled past everyone and tied on an apron. "You couldn't just wait until I got back to write the specials?" Anne asked in passing. Lily laughed. "You'd think I would have learned a long time ago." She handed off 2 more orders and went back to the kitchen to check the chicken. She pulled out the items that Anne had picked up and stuck them in the fridge. The buzz of conversation coming from the dining room warmed her heart as she chopped up lettuce for salads. Mary added the other toppings to the salad, then helped Lily plate the dishes. Anne took one out to each of the patrons. When the chicken was ready, Lily scooped noodles onto a plate and added the chicken and sauce on top. By the time the initial rush of customers was served, she was exhausted. Her kids sat in a corner resting, and Anne chatted with one of the groups. Lily's phone buzzed. It was her newspaper friend, telling her they'd love to do a piece and would be over in the morning. She smiled at the message and started on another batch of chicken. She'd have to answer back when she had a spare moment. It was another hour of craziness before she finally said goodbye to the last customer. She sent Anne home once the dishes were done, then turned off most of the lights. She pulled out the poster board and markers Anne had bought and made posters to hang up around the store. With a week and a half left in the diner, she figured throwing one more party on the last night would be the best way to say thank you to the community that had kept it going for generations. Once those were done, she got the roast ready to go for the next morning. She wrapped them in foil and set them in the oven to slow cook. She cleaned up the rest of the kitchen, then leaned down to wake her kids, who had fallen asleep on the floor of her office. "Hey, let's go. I'm done." She helped them up and got their coats on before locking up. "I came to see if you needed any help," David said from behind her. Lily jumped and turned. "I was just finishing a few things up. Thank you for offering. Why don't I at least give you a ride home?" David walked over to Lily. "I wanted to come by tonight, but we had last-minute things to clear up for Saturday night. How was your day?" Lily shrugged. "It was slow until tonight. Then it was a madhouse, but I survived." "Ever the survivor." His crooked smile sent a thrill through her. Thoughts of the letter and wanting to give up ran through her mind, but she pushed them away. "I only survived because I have no other choice." David reached up and brushed his thumb across her cheek. Even more amazing. Lily's breath caught as he leaned forward and brushed her lips with his. The cold was forgotten as his closeness warmed her. She kissed him back, wrapping her arms around him. They stood there in the headlights of his truck for a few more moments before they pulled away. He touched her nose with his before stepping back. "I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me." Lily could feel her face burning as she tried to catch her breath. "It's okay. I mean, if it was okay with you, let's get in the truck." Lily climbed in and ignored the giggles from her kids as David pulled away in silence. Neither of them said anything until the kids were in their rooms getting ready for bed. Lily put a pot of hot water on the stove and turned to find David staring at her. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine, just exhausted. I sent Anne to get some stuff and there was a rush of customers. It was rather chaotic for a while there." Lily dumped some hot chocolate powder into 4 mugs and poured the hot water over it, then handed one to David. David laughed. "That would have been an adventure. I wish I could have been there to help you." "That would have been great, actually." She paused while Patrick and Mary sat at the table. She handed each of them a mug. These two were very good helpers. They helped me get through all of it until Anne showed up. I've seen them at work. They're pretty amazing." David winked. He set his mug in the sink and rinsed it out. "I'd better get going." "Thanks for stopping by. I wasn't looking forward to the walk home." Lily handed him his scarf. David leaned down and kissed her softly. "You're welcome." "Bye, David," Mary called, and Patrick followed suit. "You two get to bed so your mom can sleep." He waved and left the house. Lily watched him drive away and turned to find Mary giggling. "What?" "You kissed him. I didn't think it would ever happen." Mary stood and put her mug in the sink. "I'm glad you did. Night, Mom." Lily kissed her on the cheek. "I am too. Good night, sweetie. Brush your teeth and go straight to bed. No reading under the covers." Patrick dropped his mug in the sink and wrapped his arm around Lily's neck. "David would be a good daddy." "You think so?" Lily's heart melted. "He makes you happy. I like seeing you happy. Plus, he throws the best snowballs." He kissed Lily on the cheek and ran out of the kitchen. Lily stood in the kitchen, still feeling David's kiss on her lips. It had been unexpected, but had given her something she hadn't felt in a long time: faith that everything would be okay. The next morning, Lily sent Mary and Patrick off to school with a group of their friends with a promise that they'd go right there. She made her way to the diner and smiled at the decorations she'd put all over the windows. It looked better than she remembered. Anne came in not long after and set her coat in the corner of the office. "It smells great in here. I may eat all the roast myself." "If you want a paycheck, I suggest you allow the meat to get to the tables." Lily laughed and tied on her apron. "Fair enough." Anne turned on the coffee pots and grabbed jam from the storage room, while Lily mixed up batter for pancakes. When the first customers showed up, everything was ready to go. Anne and Lily took turns between the kitchen and taking orders. David stopped long enough to grab a piece of toast and some hot chocolate before he left, with a wink. Lily smiled and went back to sweeping the floor. She ignored the questioning looking from Anne. They could gossip later when the diner wasn't so full. It wasn't until just before lunch that they finally had a break to rest for a moment. They had to call in 2 of their former employees to help out. It made no sense that just doing the paint on the windows would bring in this much traffic. Maybe her article had showed up in the newspaper already. But no, she hadn't sent anything in yet. Lily took out one of the roasts and sliced it into thin slices for the lunch crowd. After making a few sandwiches, she wrapped up the rest and put it back in the oven. "Hey, Lily, we have someone who wants to pay their compliments to the chef." Anne stood at the doorway. "Really? Okay." Lily wiped her hands and moved past Anne, who gestured toward the bar where David usually sat. The man had a camera sitting next to him, and he played with the last of the eggs on his plate. "You wanted to speak to me?" Lily asked. She took the plate he handed to her and slid it through to Anne. "It's no wonder Mr. Fleshman comes in here every morning, although I'm thinking the company probably helps as well." The glint in his eyes sent a shiver down Lily's spine. Lily tried her hardest not to glare. "This is the only place in town that serves hot chocolate as early in the morning as he needs it." The man nodded and stood, throwing some money on the counter. "Fair enough. You don't happen to know where he lives, do you?" "Why would I know that?" Lily wanted nothing more than to push him out the door. "I've heard things." He handed off a business card. "Beautiful place you have here." "Thank you." Lily took the card and walked into the kitchen. What did that man want with David? He was obviously a reporter. She would have known even without his card. Anne looked up from the noodles. "I'm so sorry. If I'd known he was a slimeball, I wouldn't have had you go out there." "It's not your fault." Lily shoved his card in her back pocket and took out another order. She set the food down in front of the customers. "Here you go. I hope you enjoy." "Thank you." The woman smiled up at her. "You've done a beautiful job in here. What's the occasion?" Lily sighed. She'd hoped to announce it later. Thank you. Sadly, we're having to close. I just wanted it to look nice for the holidays. Oh dear, I'm so sorry to hear that. I wanted to come and see the diner for myself. I've heard so much about it. She took her napkin and laid it on her lap. You have? Lily looked around the diner, wondering how many other people were here because of things they'd heard. From who? The woman looked at Lily strangely. It's in the news. David Fleshman has done mourning, and it's all thanks to a beautiful mystery woman in his hometown diner. I can only assume they mean you. Lily gripped the chair in front of her so she wouldn't fall over. What? How? Don't question, just go with it. The woman took a bite and closed her eyes in pleasure. This is heavenly. Thank you. Lily walked back into the kitchen in a daze. What had just happened? She sent a quick text to David to see what was going on, and went back to work. She couldn't dwell too much on the drama while the diner was so full of people, no matter where they came from. A few minutes later, Lily heard a clicking sound blending in with the buzz of customers. She peeked around the corner to find reporters taking pictures of the diner. Lily burst into the dining room. Whoa, hey, what are you guys doing? Are you Lily Johnson? You own this place, right? The reporter shoved a microphone in her face. Yes, I do, but what are you doing here? She held up a hand to get the spotlight out of her eyes. Another cameraman suddenly turned toward Lily as well. Anne pushed her way through the crowd and grabbed Lily by the elbow, guiding her back into the kitchen. You may want to see this. Anne held up her phone to show her an article on the front page of a tabloid. It was a picture of Lily and David kissing in front of the diner the night before. Lily stared at the phone, trying to digest what she was seeing. How did they get this? I'm guessing they followed David here. Stay back in the kitchen and I'll take care of everything up front. I think the majority of your customers are reporters anyway. You don't need that right now. Thank you. Lily smiled at her and turned to the stove. She could get angry and storm out, demanding they leave. Or she could make the best dinner they'd ever tasted and drum up some business. She felt guilty using David to make money, but only a little, since he was the reason they were here in the first place. She pulled out her phone. Hey, Mike, what meats do you have available right now? Okay, perfect. I want it all. Thanks. She made sure the pasta was ready to go and plated, then went to her computer to type out a new menu. Along with the burgers and milkshakes she normally served, she added steak, salmon, and filet mignon. She'd also need to order some asparagus and more rice as well. After hitting print, she went back to filling orders. Mike showed up at the back door and set all of the meat in the fridge. That's quite the crowd out there. What's with the video cameras? Lily's face burned. Word got out that David Fleshman eats here. Wait, the David Fleshman? He asked. Lily sighed and glanced over to catch his grin. I take it you already heard everything? Yep, on the way over here. I have to admit I was a little jealous when I found out you were his girlfriend. He winked and picked up his cooler. Oh, sorry. Seriously, though, thank you for bringing the delivery. If this goes well, I should be able to pay you back tomorrow. Does that work? Lily felt another pang of guilt that she was using the publicity, but the way it had just fallen into her lap. Perfect. See you tomorrow. Mike left the way he'd come, and Lily turned back to the oven to pull out the chicken pot pie Anne had started earlier. Anne came around the corner just as Lily started plating the dishes. Eric and Susan are here. I put them in charge of orders, but we may have to switch out soon. It's a madhouse. Thank you. Have you seen my kids? Lily slid the plate to Eric and turned back to grab the next dish. Yes, they're hiding in the office. Anne nodded toward the office and dished up some pasta. We're going to need more sauce. Okay, I'll get it started. 1 minute. Lily peeked her head into the office. Hey, you two, can you stuff the menus for me? The papers are here, and the menu folders are under the desk. Mary nodded and glanced toward the dining room. "What's going on?" "Other people found out that David kissed me. Just stay back here and you'll be fine. I'll get you some food in a sec." Lily shut the door and grabbed some garlic and onions for her marinara sauce. She chopped the onions first and scooped them into a large pot before moving on to the garlic. She let them saute for a moment while she grabbed tomatoes. There was a slight knock at the back door before it opened. Lily tensed, hoping it wasn't one of the reporters. But it was David. She wanted to punch him and hug him at the same time. He put his finger to his lips and didn't speak until he was right next to Lily. "Hey, I heard this was a madhouse, and I came to help. Where do you need me?" "First, you need this." Anne stuck a face mask on him, then followed it with a hairnet. "Don't talk, and don't you dare let people know you're here." David raised his eyebrows at Lily, but listened to Anne. Lily told David to marinate some of the steak while she added the tomatoes to the sauce and put on another pot to boil more noodles. They worked in silence as the crowds continued to pour in and out of the restaurant. Lily was almost out of her usual dishes by the time the diner closed for the night. She'd have to get more meat and vegetables for the next day. "Will you go make sure everyone has left the diner?" Lily asked. She dropped another pot into the dishwater. Once everyone had left, Mary and Patrick crept out of the office, and Lily handed them each a plate of spaghetti. David washed the dishes while Lily dried. Eric and Susan swept the floors and washed down all the tables before moving on to the bathrooms and kitchen. When they were done with that, Lily had them take over the dishes and started on the prep work for the next day. "So this will end soon, right?" Lily asked. She rubbed the roast with spices and flipped it over. "It depends on how much gossip they can get out of their few minutes of seeing you. Look, I am so sorry. I didn't know anyone had followed me here. This is why I moved out of New York." David leaned against the counter. Lily set the roast in a pan and added the potatoes, carrots, and other veggies before wrapping it up. "I'll forgive you if you forgive me." Lily set the roast in the oven and shut the door before meeting his eyes. "I might have taken advantage of the press by trying to make money off them." David laughed and pulled her into a hug. "Most people would kick them out and tell them to go away. Trust you to feed them good food before sending them off." Lily joined in, and it helped drain away her fatigue. She stepped back and wiped the tears running down her face from laughing so hard. "Man, I needed that. Thank you. Go grab some food and join Mary and Patrick if you want. I'm almost done." "I can help. I don't trust the press yet. If I go out there, it could be bad." He scooped the chopped onions into the next pan and scattered them around the roast. "So this is your life?" Lily chopped some carrots next. David stopped crushing the garlic for a second before starting again. "Yes, well, it was. That's why I drive the old truck. They don't expect me to drive something so beat up. Or at least that's what I thought. I guess I slipped and forgot to watch for people when I headed out of work one day or something. Must be a pain." Lily walked over to the sink and washed her hands. "It is." David's good mood seemed to have dissolved, and he was quieter than she'd seen him before. "I'm going to sneak out the back again and take the long way home. I'd give you a ride." "I'll take her. You go." Anne smiled at him and pulled on her coat. David nodded and left the back way. Lily had the kids switch out the menus while she counted money, and Anne did the recount. They had enough to pay Mike back the next day, along with the other deliveries they'd need. Lily set some aside to pay for the utilities as well and put the rest in the safe. Anne took Mary's hand and Patrick took Lily's as they locked and deadbolted the door. They ran for the car and climbed in. Anne pulled out of the diner and drove around town a couple of times before taking Lily home. "Let's hope that worked. See you all in the morning." Anne laid her head against the seat as Lily climbed out. "Thank you. I'll be there early tomorrow. Sleep in. You'll need your rest." Lily smiled and shut the door before hurrying inside. She shut and locked the door before leaning against it. That was insane. Okay, you two have already eaten, so brush your teeth and we'll have prayers. Mary left the room and Patrick followed, grumbling. Bedtime was not his favorite time of day. Lily walked into her room and dropped on her bed. She didn't want to move, but she rolled over and made a few calls for deliveries before her kids came in for prayers. She listened to Mary's sweet pleas to get help for her family. Then Lily kissed their cheeks and told them good night. It had been a long day, and there was so much to be grateful for. That night, the tears in her eyes were of gratitude, something that had been a long time coming. Chapter 7. David sat at the church for several minutes before going in. He'd been asked to ring the bells at night as well, and that night he was grateful for the opportunity. He couldn't believe that Lily had been dragged into the media mess. All the steps he'd taken to be left alone hadn't worked. The cold wasn't quite as sharp when he climbed out of the truck. He walked into the bright cheeriness of the church. He waved at the pastor and waited for him to come down from the pulpit, where he'd been preparing for the service that evening. "There you are. I'm so thankful that you are willing to do this for me. I thought it would be good for people to go to sleep at night with the tune in their heads. That, or they'll come and yell at me, but either way, I'm getting to them." Reverend Smith laughed and led the way to the bell tower. "I guess that's a good way to look at it." David climbed the stairs and looked through the list of melodies he could play. He found a Christmas song and decided it would fit that night well. As he rang the bells to play Silent Night, he teared up. He could almost hear Sarah humming along. When it was over, the sound still haunted his thoughts. He looked out and watched as Anne left the diner to take Lily home. David went downstairs to find a few people sitting in the pews. He nodded to them and walked to the back of the church. He sat down and listened as the pastor spoke of service. Remember that service is not just for the holiday season, but something that's important year-round. Find those around you who might need help and assist them in the best way you know how. David slipped out before the song was over and climbed into his truck. He drove home and made some popcorn so he could watch a movie. The Christmas tree distracted him, and he thought back to the night Lily had been there. It was the first time this place had felt like home, and he ached for it again. David made it into the city early the next morning and did his best to be as visible as possible. He wanted to do anything he could to pull the attention away from Lily while making sure she still had plenty of business. Not that he had to try too hard for that. He'd learned that he was a walking advertisement for any place he walked into. It wasn't so bad most of the time. He got a lot of free meals, and everyone went out of their way to make sure he had the best of whatever they served. He just made sure to tip heavily as he left. After shopping for several hours to finish off the details for the party the next night, David dropped the supplies off at the reception hall where they'd be holding the party. Workers were busy hanging decorations, and the tables glittered from the silver and the goblets set at each place. He couldn't wait to see how his employees would react to everything. "Is everything to your liking, sir?" the owner, Steve, asked. "You've surpassed my liking. Seriously, this is why I chose you to put on the party." David gestured to the bags he'd brought with him. "Here are the gifts I want to hand out. Do you have a spot for them yet?" "Of course. They'll go up near your seat." Steve whistled for help, and 2 men came by to grab the bags and followed them to the front. "You and your date will sit here, as will your assistant and the others you recommended." "Perfect. I have everything wrapped and ready to go. However you decide to display them, I want these 3 to be last." David pointed to 3 smaller packages. Steve wrote it down in his notebook. "Wonderful. Is there anything else you need? Otherwise, I need to go make sure the food is prepared correctly. I'm leaving it all in your hands. Thank you." David nodded at him and left the hall, smiling at the employees as he walked past. He couldn't wait to see the look on Lily's face when she saw it. And speaking of Lily, he still needed to arrange her dress fitting. He climbed in a cab and directed the driver to a building near Times Square. He climbed out and smiled at the few photographers who were waiting outside. He'd let slip that he'd be here later that day and climbed upstairs. "Hello, I need to speak to Mr. Walker," he said to the receptionist. Her eyes were wide as she called her boss to let him know David was there. It was only a minute or so before David was called back. He sat down on the plush chair in front of the desk and waited for Mr. Walker to speak. "It's a nice surprise to see you here. I trust you have good news about our campaign." Mr. Walker folded his hands on the desk. "Oh, it's ready to go. My secretary will be calling you Monday to set up a meeting so you can see it. I'm here to talk about something else, actually." He cleared his throat. "My date needs a dress for the party tomorrow night, and I want to make sure it's perfect. I was hoping to bring her by tomorrow afternoon to be pampered and dressed for the evening. Are your employees up for it?" Mr. Walker stared at David for a moment before smiling. "This must be some special woman." "You have no idea." "I'll agree, but only if you let us create your tuxedo as well." David laughed. "It's a deal. I was thinking around 3 o'clock. Will that give you enough time to have things ready?" "We'll be ready." He stood and shook David's hand. "Thank you for allowing us this opportunity." "You're welcome. We'll see you tomorrow." David left with a big smile on his face. He couldn't wait to see what they designed for her. He left and headed to work to pick up his truck. He wanted to help Lily at the diner, but he needed to make a couple of stops first. The drive through the city was slow because of rush hour traffic. He should have left an hour before. He stopped at a florist just outside the city and bought some red roses, then drove to a small cemetery. A frozen white blanket covered the ground, but he could have made it to the headstone with his eyes closed. The flowers stood out brightly against the white surrounding them. David brushed the snow away from Sarah's headstone and knelt down. "I can't believe another month has gone by since you left me. I hope you're proud of the changes I've made in my life. I've made them for you, and you're right. I'm so much happier when I serve." David wiped his eyes. "I'm sure you've noticed that I met someone. I think you'd like her. She's beautiful, smart, and has a wonderful laugh. And 2 of the most amazing kids. I don't know what to do." He sat in silence for another few minutes before standing and touching the headstone. No answers had come, but he hadn't really expected one. He knew she would be happy for him. That's all she'd ever wanted. The question was, could he allow himself to let go and move on? It was another hour before he finally got back home. The diner's parking lot was packed with cars again, and he saw flashes going off in several places. He drove past and parked in his garage before walking around the long way to go in the back door. Lily was trying to do several things at once, so David stepped in to help out. He kept the mask and hairnet on and made sure to stay away from the window into the dining room. "I see things haven't calmed down much," he whispered as he took a plate from Lily. "I think it's worse today." She threw some more noodles into a pot and handed the spoon to David to stir, then took another 2 dishes to the window. David went to the pantry to look through the spices. He pulled out the ones he needed and set them on the counter and then pulled out another pan. He sautéed the garlic and added onions and a few other spices to the mix. "What are you doing?" Lily stared at the pan in front of him. "Making my pasta dish. I know it's not on the menu, but it makes a lot, and it's fast." He set the pan aside and grabbed a pot for the noodles he'd need. Lily nodded. "Right, we'll just add that to the specials list." "So you don't have anyone else to help?" David asked. "It's kind of insane in here." "I have 2 friends who should be here any minute. If you have suggestions on how to calm this down, I'd love to hear it. Not that I don't love the business. We're just almost out of ingredients." Lily pulled some chicken out of the oven and set it on the counter to dish up. David poured the noodles into the pot and turned the heat down. "I have an idea, if you're willing to do it." "What's that?" Lily asked. "Come to a movie with me. We'll go out the back, but accidentally be seen so they'll follow us. But that's only if you want the diner to empty out. You sure you want to lose the business? And more importantly, are you okay with them following us to the movie?" Lily glanced out the window to the chaos in the dining room and sighed. "As much as I love the business, I need to restock before we can make anything else. Are you okay with that, Anne? I could just announce that we're out of food, but then what would the reporter say? A break from the insanity? That's a big yes. You two go, and I'll deal with it." Anne grabbed a few plates and left the kitchen. David helped Lily put on her coat, and they had Mary and Patrick follow them outside. David walked around the corner and waited until the crowd noticed him. He put his arm around Lily and took Patrick's hand while Lily held Mary's hand. They walked to the theater slowly to make sure they had reporters following them. "Where are we going?" Mary asked. "To a movie," Lily said. David was relieved to find that there was a children's movie playing as they walked up to buy tickets. The familiar flashes of cameras made him smile. It had worked. They walked into the movie, and David paid for popcorn, candy, and drinks for the kids, and one big tub of popcorn for him to share with Lily. They found their seats in an almost empty theater and sat down to wait for the movie to start. Lily helped her kids open their candy and settled back into her seat. David hadn't seen her so excited. "When was the last time you saw a movie in the theater?" he whispered. "Years." She thought for a moment. "I think Mary was 2. She wouldn't sit still for more than a few seconds at a time." David chuckled. "Well, it's about time you came back, and this time Mary might sit still." Mary looked up from her candy. "What? Never mind." Lily looked behind them and tensed up. "They all followed us here." David glanced over his shoulder to see the seats filled with reporters, then turned back around. "Just relax and pretend they're not here. This way, your employees can have a small break, and we get to watch a movie together. Win-win situation." "You're right. Thank you. My kids have begged me for months to see this." Lily took a small handful of popcorn. "You're welcome, although I have to admit I was just doing it so I could take you on a date." He winked and turned back to the previews. The movie started, and David laughed right along with the kids. Sometime during the movie, Lily laid her head on David's shoulder. He kissed her forehead and enjoyed the closeness. When the movie ended, they stood and found that the theater had emptied out. "Where'd they all go?" Lily helped Patrick get his coat on. "They're most likely outside waiting for the perfect shot of us leaving the theater." David took her hand, and they walked out into the cold. "See what I mean?" Flashes of light blinded them as reporters shoved their microphones into David's face. Reporter after reporter fired questions at them, so David held up his hand to quiet them. "Thank you for your attention. We would ask that you leave us alone so we can protect the privacy of those around us. If you could please wait until tomorrow's party to look for news, I'd appreciate it." He led the family toward the church and didn't say anything else until they were inside. Mary and Patrick walked to the front to talk to the pastor, and David watched the door to make sure no one would come and bother Lily's family. "Let's hope that will appease them, but I think we'll just stick around here for a while. Some might try to come into the church, but I doubt Reverend Smith would let that happen. Now, want to help me out?" David took her hand in his and walked to the front. "Help with what?" Lily asked. David smiled at the pastor and kept walking toward the stairs. "I assume you've heard the bells lately?" "Yeah?" David stopped to take off his coat and put it around Lily's shoulders. "Well, that's me." "That's amazing." She walked up the stairs and David followed behind her. "Here's the best view in the town." David held his hands out when they stood in the tower. "The best place to see the sunrise and sunset." "Wow!" She shivered and turned to look up at the bells. "So you just pull on the ropes?" "Yes, but there are different melodies we can play. Right here." He held up the book and turned the pages. Lily read over his shoulder and stopped at a page. "Can we play this one?" David froze, but nodded. She'd chosen Amazing Grace, Sarah's favorite. He set the book down. "Okay, here we go. You pull these, and I'll take care of these two. Ready?" Lily took hold of the rope and nodded. "Ready." They rang the bells, and while the tempo was just slightly off, it brought tears to David's eyes. When he looked down at Lily, he noticed that she was also choked up. He put his arm around her, and they walked down the stairs together. Mary and Patrick were sitting near the back of the chapel when David and Lily walked in. They sat down next to the children and listened to the sermon. There weren't many people in attendance, but the message was moving. Reverend Smith allowed them to stay after the sermon to make sure the reporters had left. It was late before they were able to leave. David ran with them back to his house and drove them home in his truck. Lily kissed him goodbye and hurried inside with the kids. David pulled out of the driveway, and his stomach filled with dread when a small car drove away with its headlights off. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and dialed Lily's number. "Hey, make sure you lock your doors. I just saw a car drive away, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't one of your neighbors." He could hear her sigh on the other end of the line. "Thank you for the heads up." She paused. "And thank you for a wonderful night." "Any time. Good night." "Night." He pulled into his garage, checked all the doors to his house, then set the alarm system. He made some hot chocolate and climbed into bed to watch TV. He avoided the news and turned on an old Christmas movie. The day had been perfect, and he fell asleep hoping Lily felt the same way. David finished his run and started the kettle before hopping in the shower. He hadn't slept for more than a couple of hours the night before, and he could feel the fatigue hanging on. Nightmares had plagued him. But this time, it was Lily who had been in the accident with him. The familiar thunk of the newspaper hitting the door brought David out of his thoughts, and he went to get it. He opened the paper and set it on the table, then grabbed his hot chocolate and toast. He took a drink and promptly spit it out when he saw Lily's face plastered across the front of the paper. True, he'd pretty much orchestrated the whole thing, but what they'd reported was hurtful toward Lily. Along with the terrible headlines, there were smaller pictures of her and David at the theater. Thankfully, the kids had been cropped out. Who is the mystery woman? The article went on to say that Lily had swept in to try to steal David's heart, and that she had no sympathy for the woman he had lost just months before. It brought up the grisly details of the accident before moving on to Lily and the little information they had about her. There were speculations about her husband and where the children came from, but no one knew. David rubbed his hand over his face in frustration. Had Lily seen this? He stood and went to get dressed. He didn't need to put on a suit like he'd planned, since Mr. Walker would be providing a tux as well. But he put on a dress shirt and nice pants so he could look good for Lily. He added a touch of cologne, then brushed his hair. He hoped she didn't see any of the newspapers. Not until after tonight, at least. Thoughts of Lily's past ran through David's mind, but he pushed them away. He'd find out more when she was willing to talk. It's not like he'd said much to her about Sarah. He grabbed his coat and left the house, looking back to make sure he hadn't forgotten anything. The silence was almost overpowering as he shut the door. He needed to have Lily and her kids back over to his house again sometime, so he could fill it with laughter. On the way to the diner, David called Peter. "Hey, I need you to make a call to any press organizations you can find and get them to stop writing articles about Lily. Feed them stories about our latest ads or something else if you need to." "So you saw the papers, I take it?" Peter sighed. "There are others already, some claiming that Lily killed her husband in his sleep, others that she ditched him in a forest somewhere and the police never found the body. You do know what you're getting into, right?" "Yes, I do. Sounds like we also need to put a no-press barrier within 100 feet of the party as well." David cringed. He knew they wouldn't like that much, especially after specifically inviting them. There was a silence for a second. "You can't protect her forever." David clenched his jaw. "I know, but I'm going to do my best. Thank you. I'll see you later." The diner parking lot was empty when David pulled up. He walked inside to find Anne washing tables, while Lily sat at a booth with papers in front of her. "Wow, it's rather quiet today." He sat across from Lily. "Where are Mary and Patrick?" "They're sledding with friends." Lily brushed her fingers through her hair. "You weren't kidding when you said the movie would help things die down here." David laughed. "I didn't think it would die this fast. Sorry about that." Lily shrugged. "We had a few show up, but we turned them away. We couldn't get any deliveries for today, so we wouldn't have been able to serve them. Besides, the last 2 days helped us pay several of our bills, so I can't complain. I have to admit, I'm a little relieved. I was planning to take you into the city after lunch, and that would have been difficult if it was busy here." David tapped his fingers to the Christmas carol playing over the speakers. "That should be fine." Lily set down her pen. "Are you sure this is okay? Having someone else provide my dress just feels wrong." David leaned forward and put his hand on hers. "My client is thrilled to be able to help you out, and he's providing me with a tux as well, if that makes you feel any better." "Yes, it does." "Okay, I'll do it, but—" Lily glanced over at Anne. "You won't care that I'm just a mystery woman? You saw the paper?" David's confidence deflated. Of course she'd get the paper. The diner provided them for the customers to buy. He should have come and grabbed them before she showed up at work. Lily nodded but avoided his eyes. "I'm sorry about your wife. I had no idea." David cleared his throat. "They got some of it wrong." "What do you mean?" Lily asked. "There was ice, yes." He paused before continuing. "But I'd been driving fast to get away from some reporters who were following us, and I didn't stop in time. It's not a coincidence that all those photos exist. They were right there to take pictures before the police ever arrived. That's why I left the city. I couldn't live with the guilt of what had happened, but I also needed to get away from the press. I had to hide where they couldn't find me, and that worked up until a few days ago." Lily stood and moved around the table to hug David as he tried to regain control over his emotions. "Hey, it's okay. Her death wasn't your fault. You were trying to protect her." David wrapped his arms around Lily and pulled her tight. "I know you're right, but it's hard to tell myself that every time I have nightmares of what happened." Lily brushed his tears away and cupped his face in her hands. "Look, you can't be responsible for what others have done. Sarah wouldn't want you blaming yourself for what happened. And you know it, right?" "You're right." He kissed her softly on the lips. "I'm going to clean up. I'm sorry, this is the last thing I wanted to do this morning." Lily brushed away his concern. "You needed to get it out, and I'm glad you did." David kissed her again before walking into the bathroom. He splashed cold water on his face, then dried it off with a paper towel. After a few more calming breaths, he left the bathroom and went to find Lily. The door to the office was slightly open, and he noticed that she was on the phone. He started to walk away, but caught a few words of the conversation. "No, it's not for sale yet. You gave me until the end of next week." "No, Monday is not okay. Look, I'll have payment to you as soon—" "Yes, I understand." David walked away and grabbed a broom that sat next to the counter. The floor was clean, but he swept anyway. What had Lily been talking about? The diner had been slow, so maybe it was that. The thought of her losing her house was worrying, but they wouldn't have called her at work for something like that. Anne grabbed him by the arm and pulled him away from the office. "If you so much as say one word to Lily about what you just heard, I'll make you regret it. She's been too excited about this party to have it blow up just hours before. Got it?" David glanced between her and the office. "Got it. I didn't realize it was that bad." "It's that bad." Anne moved away as Lily came into the dining room. Lily stopped, staring at Anne. "What's going on?" "Nothing. Just making sure he behaves himself tonight." Anne checked the clock. "Why don't you two take off? I can handle it here." "You're sure?" Lily asked. "Yes, go." Anne shot a stern look at David before heading back to the kitchen. Lily followed her into the kitchen and came back a few minutes later. "If I didn't know better, I'd almost think Anne wants to get rid of us. Is it going to mess things up if we get there a little earlier?" David shook his head. "It's probably better this way. Traffic could be pretty bad with Christmas so close." Lily pulled on her jacket and the coat David had let her borrow, then followed him out to the car. "Can we stop by to say goodbye to the kids?" "Sure. What's the address?" David opened the door to the Mercedes and let her in before going to the other side. Lily gave the directions and ran inside for a few minutes before coming back to the car. Mary and Patrick waved as they pulled away. This was the first actual date Lily and David had been on, and David couldn't help the nerves that were piling up. He wasn't supposed to have to go through this all over again. "Having second thoughts?" Lily asked. David took her hand and squeezed. "Never." Chapter 8. Lily's thoughts and emotions were so out of control, it was making her sick to her stomach. She was thrilled to be going out with him, but this was a really big event with hundreds of people she didn't know. David turned on some Christmas music, and it helped calm Lily's nerves. Something familiar was exactly what she needed right then. She watched out the window as the scenery flew by. As they got closer to the city, the traffic picked up. "So, where is the party?" Lily asked. "A reception hall near Broadway. It was my favorite." His obvious pause was followed by a clench of his jaw. Lily felt a pang of guilt. "It was your wife's favorite, right?" David sighed. "Yes, she loved attending events there even when we weren't necessarily invited." "Is that one of the joys of being famous?" "You get to crash events without getting in trouble," Lily asked, laughing. David chuckled. "You could say that, but having us show up just meant more publicity for whoever was holding the event." That had to be nice. Lily couldn't imagine having that much power. But then she'd seen it in action with the press. He'd seemed so calm as he helped lead them away from the diner. "We're going to get there a little early, so we have time to go to lunch first if you'd like." David changed lanes and turned down a street. "I'd like that. I forgot to eat breakfast this morning." She'd been planning to eat when she got to the diner, but then the newspaper article had driven all thoughts of food out of her mind. David pulled into a parking garage and found an empty spot. "It'll be easier to walk from here. Besides, we're not too far from where we're going." Sounds great. Lily climbed out of the car and took David's hand. They walked down to the street and into a building to take an elevator to the top. The doors opened to a restaurant with breathtaking views of the city. The decor was more modern than her diner. Paintings with bright splashes of color lined the walls, and the booths were high-backed with plush red cushions. Waiters and waitresses bustled about, taking orders and bringing in food. "I can see what you're doing," David whispered close to Lily's ear. "No comparing your diner to this place. It's beautiful, but the food doesn't compare to yours." "I can't help it. The diner is all I've known for years, and I can see how much updating it needs. But that's sweet of you to say." Not that the updating would ever happen. She'd be closing on Monday, after the threat she'd received over the phone that morning. She shoved it out of her mind. No need to dwell on it. A waitress pulled out 2 menus. "Right this way, Mr. Fleshman." David winked at Lily as they walked toward a table in the back. "I might have come here a few times before." Lily shook her head and laughed. She sat at the table and looked down at the main menu in front of her. Everything was over $20, including the appetizers. Several of the dishes were ones she'd toyed with at her diner, but they never caught on. People in town were perfectly happy with burgers, pancakes, and chicken parmesan, so that's what she'd always go back to making. "Order whatever you'd like, but I recommend the salmon or the prosciutto stuffed chicken. Both are amazing." David took a drink of his water. "Just how many times have you been to this place?" Lily set her menu aside and folded her hands in front of her. David grinned. "Too many to count. It's my favorite place to bring clients." The waiter came over, and David ordered the salmon while Lily decided to try the chicken. She'd already been eyeing it before David had recommended it. "So your office is nearby, then?" Lily asked. David gestured toward the window. "See that building over there, standing above the others?" "Yeah, that one's yours?" Lily's eyes widened. It had to be over 80 stories high. "No, it's the one next to it. My dad had tried to buy the other one years ago, but they weren't willing to sell. I'm glad they didn't, though. I have a top-floor office, and it makes me dizzy to look out." If it was anything like the view Lily could see from her table, she could understand that. She took a drink of her water and set her napkin on her lap. "Hey, look at me." David waited for Lily to meet his eyes. "You'll be fine. There's no need to be nervous. Just watch what I'm doing and follow." "I can't help it. Sorry." Lily spread her hands out on the table, trying to calm down. David put his hand over hers, and his warmth helped her relax. Tingles ran up her arm, and she concentrated on his deep brown eyes. "Better?" "Yes, thank you." She leaned back when the waiter brought a tray of bread to the table. She took a slice and buttered it. The bread almost melted in her mouth when she took a bite of it. "Oh, my! I have to admit this is my favorite part of the meal. I've been known to sneak it out of the restaurant before." He took a bite of his bread. "I'm sure they love that." Lily took another bite, then wiped her mouth. "I'm going to run to the restroom. Please excuse me." The bathroom was just as fancy as the rest of the restaurant, and actually had someone sitting there with towels. As she walked back to the table, she caught a few whispers and glares from other patrons. She checked her shirt and hair, wondering what they were so upset about. It wasn't until she caught a snatch of David and that woman that she realized what was going on. Her face was burning by the time she sat down, and she stared at the salad in front of her. "Hey, what's going on? What happened? Your face is bright red." The concern in David's eyes only made things worse. "People were talking about us. I'm not used to that." Lily stabbed her lettuce and took a bite, but didn't really taste anything as she choked it down. David's eyes narrowed. "Who was it?" Lily shrugged. "It doesn't matter. I just wasn't expecting it. Has everyone in the world heard you're dating me?" "Probably. Those reporters were pretty relentless." He sat back while they set down his salmon. The chicken was set in front of Lily, and even though she'd lost her appetite before, the food looked amazing. She took a bite, and the flavors burst in her mouth. This was a dish she would have to play with and make for herself. The prosciutto gave the chicken a richer flavor, and the asparagus and the other steamed vegetables accented it perfectly. "Good?" David asked. "Amazing." She took a bite of David's salmon and shared a piece of her chicken. "Wow, the salmon is cooked to perfection." "Definitely. This is why I bring my clients. We get the account more often than not when we come here." Once lunch was over, David and Lily walked over to Times Square. Lily stared in the windows as they walked past different shops. She stopped at a newsstand to pick out a postcard for Anne, but David pulled her away before she could choose one. He glanced back nervously, but wouldn't say anything when she asked him what was going on. They walked into a building, and David pushed the elevator button. He was tense and quiet, and totally unlike the David she knew. When they stepped into the elevator, Lily moved closer to him. "How do you stand these things? It feels like my stomach is going to drop through my shoes." David wrapped his arms around her. "I guess I hadn't thought about it. I'm just used to it by now." The elevator stopped, and David gave her a quick kiss. Prepare to be pampered. Lily's eyes widened as they walked into a large office building. Mannequins dotted the office, wearing different styles for a winter season. A man in a sharp suit came forward and shook David's hand, then Lily's. "Lily, this is Mr. Walker. He owns this company." "Nice to meet you." Lily's heart was beating rapidly, and she had to shove her hands into her pockets to stop them from shaking. She didn't know much about fashion, but she'd heard of this place. Suddenly, she felt completely underdressed. "Ah, Lily, such a beautiful name for a beautiful lady. We'll take good care of you. Follow Nikki and Ella through those doors, and we'll make sure you're breathtaking for tonight. David, you come with me." Lily opened her mouth to protest, but Nikki and Ella had hold of her arms and guided her away. They had her take her coat off and stand on a small pedestal while they circled around her, muttering to each other. Nikki finally turned to her. "Go into that dressing room and we'll hand you gowns to try on. Come out here and we'll see which one works for you." Lily did as she was asked and waited for the gowns. The first was a deep blue dress with black embroidered roses along the skirt and bodice. She tried it on, but it was too big. She opened the door for them to see, but they immediately made her shut it and change. This went on for several more gowns before she finally tried on a dark red dress that fit her form perfectly. She left the dressing room, and the girls squealed in delight. They pulled her over to the pedestal and again circled her. "It's perfect. I didn't think the mermaid style would work for you, but I was totally wrong." Ella helped Lily down. "Now, go change, and we'll work on your hair." Lily walked back into the dressing room and changed into her jeans and button-up shirt. They were her nicest clothes, but they seemed so drab next to the dress she'd been wearing. She hung up the gown and left the dressing room. "Okay, sit here." Nikki guided her to a chair and pulled the ponytail holder out of Lily's hair. "Oh dear, you haven't had a trim in years, have you?" "No worries. We'll take good care of you. First, a wash." Lily wanted to point out that she'd washed her hair that morning, but figured it wouldn't do any good to argue. She only hoped she recognized herself by the time they were done with her. When they first started the makeover, Lily couldn't imagine it taking 5 hours to get her ready. But what she hadn't counted on was the amount of poking and prodding she'd have to endure. They plucked her eyebrows, gave her a manicure, chopped off a couple inches of hair, then added highlights, and ended with a pedicure. As they neared the time for the party, Lily stepped into her dress and walked back out to have her makeup done. They helped her slip on heels and handed her a jeweled purse before declaring her ready for the event. It wasn't until then that they finally allowed her to look in the mirror. She'd known this woman once, a long time ago. The makeup and hairstyle had taken years off, and she remembered what it felt like to be beautiful. She forced herself not to cry. She didn't want to mess up the makeup they worked so hard on. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." Lily hugged Nikki and Ella and wiped her eyes. Nikki smiled. "It was our pleasure. The beauty was there. We just had to uncover it. Now go. Your date is waiting for you. Oh, wait. We almost forgot." She handed Lily a thick wrap to wear over her dress. "There we go." Lily took a deep breath and opened the doors to the main office. David stood there, stunning in his black tailored tuxedo. His expression when he saw her told her everything she needed to know. "You look stunning." He hugged her tightly before turning to Mr. Walker. "You have outdone yourselves. Thank you for your help." Mr. Walker shook David's hand. "It's our pleasure." David put his arm around Lily and guided her toward the elevator. As soon as the door shut and they started going down, David pulled Lily closer. "Did you have fun?" "I felt a little like a pincushion here and there, but yes, I enjoyed it. Thanks again. I'd forgotten what it was like to do more than throw a ponytail or bun in my hair." Outside, a sleek black limo sat in front of the building. David opened the door and gestured for Lily to climb in. "You got a limo? You didn't need to do that. We could have walked." She settled in, and David sat next to her. "It's a bit of a drive, and I didn't want us to freeze before we got there. Besides, this way I can do this." He leaned forward and kissed her softly at first, and then with more passion. Lily's heart thudded in her chest as she wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back. By the time they reached the reception hall and David pulled away, Lily was breathless. She kissed him lightly one more time before adjusting her wrap and checking her hair to make sure nothing had escaped the French knot. David wiped his mouth, and Lily reapplied the lipstick Ella had put into her purse. The driver opened the door for them, and David climbed out first so he could help Lily. He laced his arm through hers and nodded to the driver before they walked into the hall. Other couples were arriving at the same time, and Lily stuck close to David so she wouldn't panic. The reception hall was massive and had large chandeliers hanging down every 30 feet. They'd gone all out to decorate for Christmas. People mingled in groups while others sat at their tables. Each place had a name card, and she couldn't help looking around for hers. "We're up at the front," David whispered. "We can head up there soon, but we need to make the rounds. Are you okay with that?" Lily swallowed hard and nodded. As long as he did all the talking, she might survive this. She shook hands and exchanged polite hellos, but otherwise she didn't say much. When they finally got to their table, Lily sank into her chair and breathed a sigh of relief. "Believe me, I know how you feel," a woman said. She sat down next to Lily and held out her hand. "I'm Deborah. This is Erin and her fiancé Jake." "It's nice to meet you. I'm Lily." She felt at ease around the three of them, But it wasn't until David sat next to her that she finally relaxed a little. She could almost ignore the fact that they were facing everyone. The guests looked up toward the table expectantly. The music stopped, and David stood, clearing his throat. "Welcome to our Silver Script Ad Agency Christmas party. It's been a long time in coming, but I hope to make this an annual thing. As you know, I've had quite a rough year. Sarah was dear to many of you, and it was devastating when her life was taken." Lily looked down at her plate as many of the people in the crowd glanced over at her. Most of the expressions were curious, but she sensed a few glares among them. Deborah reached over and squeezed her hand, and Lily squeezed it back. David continued, "It was Sarah's wish that I give back to the company, and as soon as I was able to pull myself out of my dark abyss, I wanted to make good on that wish. In doing so, I found another light. I won't make her stand, but I want to thank Lily for bringing me happiness I never thought would be possible again." Lily smiled up at him, but she couldn't help but wonder if she was enough to make up for the loss of Sarah. From the reaction she was getting from the others, she wasn't the only one. It took everything she had not to get up and run out of the room. "I know you're all waiting to eat the wonderful meal provided by the staff here, so I'll save the presents until the end. Thank you." David sat next to Lily and put his napkin on his lap. As soon as he gave the signal, the waiters brought out the food. "You were great up there. I bet your employees adore you." Lily thanked the waiter who brought her a salad, then turned back to David. David shook his head. "Thanks, but I'm just trying to make up for lost time." Lily took a bite of salad and shook off the questions that were running through her head. David had his own story, and he would tell her when he was ready. She was still full from lunch, so she didn't eat much of the steak they set in front of her. Deborah and David kept her engaged in conversation, and she was fascinated by their talk of advertising methods. She took mental notes of things she could use, until she remembered that she'd be closing the diner soon anyway. After dinner was finished, David stood again and asked Lily to stand with him. She'd hand him a gift, and then he'd give it to the person as their name was called. It took a while to get through the hundreds of employees, but the crowd stayed quiet until everyone had a gift at their place. As one, David had them open them. The cries of excitement brought a grin to David's face. Lily wondered if she was the only one who caught the tear that rolled down his cheek as he looked out at his employees. When the noise had died down, David spoke again. "One more thing, and then we'll start the dance. If you'd all stand so they can move your tables, that would be great. There are a few people up here on the stage who have made a significant difference in the business this year, and I want to honor them." David pulled up each person at the table and announced their promotions. Lily had expected to see jealousy or anger as the names were called, but the cheers only got louder with each announcement. When David announced that his assistant was to be made a partner, the crowd went wild. Then David asked them to dim the lights, and music started. He turned and offered a hand to Lily. They walked to the dance floor, and David put his arms around her, pulling her close. Others followed suit, and the dance began. Lily enjoyed David's closeness for several songs. She laid her head against his chest as they moved around the floor. She'd wanted to sit during the faster songs, but David pulled her back. When her legs threatened to collapse, she finally broke away and weaved through other couples to get to the ladies' room. She checked her makeup and walked toward the door just as a group of women came in, laughing loudly. "Oh, it's you," one lady sneered. "I heard about you." Lily jerked back. "What do you mean?" Please, anyone can see you're after David's money. Although I must admit that you clean up nicely." She laughed and walked past Lily. "David has been through more than most people should ever have to deal with. He needs someone who will appreciate him, not use him for her own gain," another girl said, glaring at Lily. "Go back home and let us take care of him." Lily felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. She rushed out of the bathroom, cringing at the malicious laughter coming from behind her. She'd never had to deal with such catty people before in her life. Brushing away a stray tear, she pushed through the crowd trying to find David. He stood near the center of the room, surrounded by a few women, joking and laughing with him. Lily stopped short. So this is what he did as soon as she left. Was she just another woman to him? She turned and ran out into the hallway, ignoring David's calls to her. She dropped into a chair and buried her face into her hands. "Hey, what's going on? Why are you out here?" David's voice echoed in the empty hallway. He put his hand on her back, but she jerked away. "I just want to go home. If you need to stay, that's fine. I just have to go." Lily stood and walked toward the door. David caught up and pulled her back. "What's going on? You were fine just a minute ago." "Two women in the restroom said I was after your money. I knew it was a mistake to come. This isn't me." She tried to block out the women's words, but they kept playing over and over in her head. She pushed her way outside and realized she'd left the wrap at her table. "Please let me get your things. I'll go with you." David kissed her cheek and ran into the building. Lily waited for David, hoping no one else would come out. Shame had set in, and she couldn't believe how she'd acted. Maybe they were right. Maybe she wasn't good for him. David left the building just as the limo pulled up. He put the wrap around her shoulders and opened the door for her. She slipped inside and stared out at the window as they drove to the parking garage where they'd left the truck that morning. They climbed out and thanked the driver, then climbed into David's truck. He blasted the heater to warm them up. "Now, can you tell me what happened?" David asked. He pulled onto the road and headed for home. Lily explained what happened, and by the time she was done, David's knuckles were white as they held onto the steering wheel. "You don't know who they were?" he asked. "Did you recognize them at all?" "I don't think so. It was all a blur." Lily rubbed her temples to try to get rid of the headache that was coming on. David took her hand. "Please don't listen to them. They're just listening to poison that's being passed around, and I'm doing what I can to fix it." Lily stared at David, stunned. "You knew about those stories?" "Only a little. Peter warned me about them. I don't know where the press is getting anything, and believe me, I'm going to find out." "Don't bother. There's some truth to what they say." Lily stared out the window. "Not about why I'm with you. I don't care about the money. I mean, about my ex-husband." David turned onto the highway toward their town. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." Lily took a deep breath. "Just after Patrick was born, my ex-husband took up drinking. He wasn't an angry drunk, but I didn't want it in my house. I put up with it for a year or two, but one time he came home and started screaming at us. He tried to hit Mary, and I got in the way. I pushed him out of the house, and he fell and hit his head on the cement step. He was fine, but he spent a few days in the hospital. I don't think he remembers anything about that night except falling. He told anyone who would listen that I tried to kill him. The local sheriff questioned me, but knew us both well enough that he dropped it. My ex was jailed later for some other crime and died in prison of an overdose from drugs that had been slipped in to him by an old friend." When David didn't say anything, Lily continued. She should have stopped, but the words just kept spilling out. Mary and Patrick don't remember him at all and haven't ever asked about him. When you came into the picture, they started telling me how much they wanted a daddy. Lily shivered. She was glad to have the story out in the open at last. So, I don't know who told the reporters what happened, but they only have part of the story. They'll dig up just about anything. I'm so sorry. They should have never gone after you. This is my fault. David grumbled. I'll fix this. Lily's anger flared, surprising her. You don't have to fix anything. It's my problem. Don't take the blame for something that wasn't you. It happened years ago. David sighed. I wish you would just let me help sometimes without fighting back. I appreciate the help you've given me, but I can take care of things myself. Lily looked out the window and clamped her mouth shut. She should never have said anything. It wasn't his business anyway, right? She was thankful when they pulled onto her street, and she took deep breaths to calm down. He'd put himself out there big time to get her to the party that night, and she needed to show him some appreciation. Then she could just ignore him after that. She had a diner to close and Christmas to worry about. David pulled into the drive and moved to open the door for Lily, but by the time he'd gotten around the car, she was out. She smoothed her dress and climbed the steps, then waited for him. Thank you for today. It was wonderful. Lily could tell her voice was stiff and tried to relax. She leaned forward, kissed his cheek, and walked into the house before he had a chance to say anything. It wasn't until then that she realized the clothes she'd worn that morning were still in his car, but she wasn't about to face him again. The anger she felt was just as much for herself as it was for him. How had she managed to mess up so completely? Anne stood up from the rocking chair and made Lily jump. So, how was it? It was the most amazingly wonderful party. Until 2 people attacked me in the bathroom. It went downhill from there. Wait, they attacked you? Anne backed up. Lily sighed and dropped onto the couch. It was nothing. They just said mean things that you'd expect in high school. Anne shook her head. Some people never grow up. Thanks again for watching Patrick and Mary. I hope they were good for you. They were great. They even helped make dinner tonight. I didn't know what time you'd be back, so I decided to bring them home to bed. Save you the trip to my house. Anne picked up her purse. I'd ask for more details, but I have a feeling it's complicated. See you Monday. I appreciate it. See you then. Bring any boxes you have, please. I'll need to pack things up to sell them. Which reminds me that I need to get the ad in the paper. Lily rubbed her eyes. I'll do it tomorrow. Tonight, I'm taking a long bath and going to bed. Anne opened the door. Good idea. Night, Lily. Lily changed into pajamas and hung up her dress in the closet. She'd have to figure out how to return it. It wasn't something she planned to wear again, and she just wanted to say goodbye to it all at once. Chapter 9. David lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. He needed to be at the church in a few minutes, but he couldn't bring himself to get up. It was too much work. He had spent Sunday trying to find ways to make Lily feel better, but it only seemed to annoy her more. Anne had told him to give Lily some space after church, but it had been hard when he saw her walking home in the snow with her kids. He'd taken a step forward to offer a ride, but she hurried away. When the alarm yelled at him yet again, David stood and headed for the shower. He dressed and grabbed his briefcase. The gifts David had picked out for Lily and her children mocked him from under the tree. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve, and he'd find a way to deliver the gifts even if she threw them back in his face. The church was barely visible in the fog that had settled over the valley. David pulled in and ran inside. He waved at Reverend Smith as he walked back to go up and ring the bells. He chose, "O come, all ye faithful," and the bells echoed in the thick fog, giving the song an eerie tone. A few people had trickled to listen to the sermon, but David left without looking back. He wanted to grab some hot chocolate before heading into work. Even if she wanted him to stay away, he wanted to support her diner, and had pulled out extra cash so he could give her a big tip. His heart dropped when he saw the close sign on the front of the diner. He stopped and climbed out, knowing he was going against what he'd told Anne. Inside was chaotic as Lily and Anne pulled decorations off the wall and boxed up the food. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice echoing through the diner. The women stopped and turned. Lily climbed off the chair and came over to talk. Anne glared from where she stood. "We didn't have any choice. We had to sell everything in order to pay the creditors." Lily wiped her hands on a towel. "Why didn't you just let me help? You know I would have paid everything off for you." David noticed the anger on Lily's face, but he didn't care. "You can't just keep pushing people away like this, especially when they're trying to help you." Hurt and anger marred Lily's beautiful features. "It's the only thing I can do to protect my family. I can't risk them getting hurt." David took the last few steps toward Lily and pulled her into an embrace. He kissed her hard, trying to put all of his feelings behind it. The thought of losing her was like a knife to his heart. "You're about to push away the man who has fallen so desperately in love with you that he'd give up everything just to have you. You and your kids mean the world to me. Don't you realize that?" He stormed out of the diner and almost stopped when he heard the sobs from behind him. The need to help and protect her was strong, but he ignored it and climbed into his truck. He had one day left at work before Christmas, and he wanted to get ready for next season. The fog was still thick as he drove, so he had to be careful of other cars. It didn't lift until he was almost to the city, and he could make out the large buildings in front of him. He pulled into his parking space and waved at the paparazzi as they took pictures. The police would have to be notified once he got inside. The press wasn't supposed to come anywhere near the building, and that included the parking lot. Employees smiled and some waved as David walked by, but he just kept walking. He opened the door to his office and shut it behind him, wanting privacy. A few minutes later, Peter knocked and opened the door. "Word is not to mess with you today. What happened?" Peter sat in the chair on the other side of the desk. "Lily." David turned on his computer and typed in his password. Peter shook his head. "Figures. I thought she'd be perfect for you, man." David ran his fingers through his hair in frustration. "She is. She's just too stubborn to realize it." "She does know you're worth over $1 billion, right?" Peter asked, surprised. "I think that's the problem, actually. Did you need something? I want to get these numbers sent to my accountant and look through the ad campaigns coming up after Christmas." Peter set down the newspaper he'd been holding and walked to the door. "Your party was a hit. Your stock flew through the roof, and we've had several submissions for advertising roll-in since this morning. Oh, and Mr. Walker has called about 5 times this morning, so I suggest you call him back." "Thanks. When's your flight?" David grabbed the paper and opened it. "I'll leave shortly after lunch. Thanks again for the tickets. My wife has done nothing but rave about you since Saturday. I'm almost jealous." He winked and left the office. David laughed. Peter's wife, Rebecca, and Sarah had been best friends. David had been afraid of her reaction when he started dating Lily, but she'd been thrilled to meet her at the party. The article was full of pictures from the party, submitted by David's own photographer, and snippets about the gifts that were given out. David smiled at the joy on the faces of his employees. Peter's reaction had been priceless when he learned he'd be a partner. The photograph captured his stunned expression perfectly. David put the newspaper in his briefcase to take home and got to work. The accountant would only be in for another hour because of the holiday. Peter and a few other members of his team had already gone through everything, so David just had to glance at the numbers and send it on. The submissions that came through his email dealt mostly with the Super Bowl, so he sent several on to the agents who worked with sports commercials. He could have let Aaron and Deborah take them, but he needed them for the more complicated ads. Smithson Jewelers would only work with Aaron, and they wanted to get started on Valentine's Day ads. When all the upcoming contracts were sent on, he checked on the commercials that would be playing over the next week. New Year's Eve was also huge, and he was happy with the ads they'd come up with. He shut down his computer and left his office. Most of the building was empty by that time, and he made sure to wave at those who were left as he headed out to his truck. Reporters sat outside the parking garage, and their flashes started going off as soon as they recognized his truck. As much as he loved it, David knew he'd be getting himself a new one for Christmas. As far as he knew, they hadn't found his house yet, and he'd like to keep it that way. After meandering through the streets of New York, he made his way home, checking now and then for anyone following him. The Christmas music on the radio was upbeat and happy, contrasting the mood he was in. It had been easy to push away his feelings while he went through numbers, but the loss of Lily's smile and the hugs from her children came crashing down. He'd finally started looking forward to Christmas morning, and now it was worse than before he'd met her. It was nearly dark when David finally made it back to town. He drove past the diner and saw that the lights were still on and people were working inside. As much as he wanted to stop by and help, he continued to the church. There was nothing waiting for him at home, so he wanted to avoid it as much as possible. The church organ welcomed him as he opened the large doors to go inside. There wouldn't be another sermon for a few hours, so David had time to sit and think for a while. He pulled out the Bible and went through some of his favorite verses, but nothing seemed to pull him out of his mood. "You seem down." Reverend Smith sat in the pew in front of David. "Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. Surely it's the time to celebrate." David leaned forward and rested his elbows on his knees. "No, not this year. I had Sarah taken from me, and just when I thought I could move on, Lily walked away as well." "Oh, I'm sorry. I could see how much you cared for her and how much she cared for you." Reverend Smith stared off into the distance. "I assume you saw that she's closed the diner." "Yes, I offered to help her keep it open, and that just made things worse." David sighed. "Maybe I'm cursed." Reverend Smith chuckled. Chapter 10. Not cursed. You're just trying to find your way.
Wasn't quite
Sometimes
as
we
relaxing
feel
as
like
Lily had
everything
hoped.
will work out.
She'd been able to sell
that
the
doesn't
appliances
necessarily
to
mean
a
it
few
will.
restaurants in the next
We
town
have to
over.
remember that
and
others
heard
have
she
their
already
free will
had an
too.
offer on the diner.
David
Although
nodded.
she hadn't heard much since
I've noticed
then.
that.
Anne
You've
had helped
done a
Lily
lot of
get a
good in
few
these
house
past
cleaning
few months.
jobs that
I saw
she'd
the
be starting
newspaper.
after Christmas.
Your wife would be
With
very
one
happy
last
with
look
you.
at the diner that had
Don't
been a
look at
part
the
of her
bad
life
when these
since
things
she was a
happen.
small girl.
Trust that
She locked
things
the
will
door
get better.
and stepped away.
Right now, Lily is dealing with a lot
Anne
of
put her
trials.
arm around
Give her
Lily
some
as they
time,
walked to the car.
and maybe she'll realize what she's
"You
lost."
okay?" Anne asked.
David rubbed his eyes.
Lily shook
I
her
hope
head.
so. Thank
I
you,
don't know what
Reverend.
hurts more,
The pastor
losing
nodded
the
and
diner
stood.
or losing the
"Excuse
one
me,
guy
I
who
have
was
a few
willing
things to
fight
go over
for me.
before tonight's sermon.
I don't
Feel
think
free
you
to
lost
stay
him
as long as you'd
unless
like."
you absolutely
Thanks.
want to. He's a good
David
guy,
stood
Lily.
and walked around
you really
the church,
should give him a chance.
looking at the different scenes
Anne pulled
depicted
into
in
the
the stained
house.
glass.
Want to do Christmas
Different
Eve
events
with us
played
tonight?
out in the windows.
No, but thank you for the
The
invitation.
creation,
I promised the
Christ's
kids
birth,
we'd make popcorn
his
and watch a
ministry,
movie on
and
TV.
so on.
As long
A
as the
peace
local channels
settled
come
on
in.
him as he walked to the
Then
last
I think
window.
we'll go to the sermon tonight. Not super
When it was
exciting,
time
but
to ring
it
the
works.
bells, David went up and played
Lily opened the
Far,
car
Far
door and
Away
climbed
on
out.
Judea's plains.
Thanks again for all your
He
help.
left shortly
I'll
after
see you tomorrow
and drove
sometime.
through the silent streets.
See ya. Merry Christmas.
He walked from his garage
and
straight to
pulled
the
out of
kitchen,
the
avoiding
driveway
the
and
living
around
room
the
with the
corner.
tree.
Lily walked
Dinner
in to find
consisted of a
Mary and
peanut butter
Patrick coloring
sandwich and grape
snowflakes
juice.
cutouts.
He curled up
When
in
did you
bed
two
and
get
wrote
home?
out the goals
I
he
thought
had
you were
for
playing
the
at
next
sets.
year.
They had to
His
go to a
computer
party.
sat next
We
to
got
him,
here about
and
an
he
hour
stared
ago.
at it for a moment.
Mary
before
held up her
picking it
cutout.
up.
We're going to
The
hang
real
these
estate
up on the
pages
windows.
for his town were short,
It's perfect.
and he was able to
I'll
find
go
the
find
diner.
tape.
The price
Lily
was
took the
fairly low,
snowflakes
which
and hung
didn't
them up
surprise
in the
him.
front room.
He sent an
Patrick brought
inquiry
his
to
and
look
added
through the
it below
property,
Mary's.
then closed the laptop
Okay,
and turned off
ready
the
for
lamp.
dinner? I bought some
David
cheese so we
stared
can
at
make
his
fondue.
phone for several minutes before he
kids
finally
cheered and
picked
went
it
to
up
find the old
and dialed a
fondue
number
set
he
that
hadn't
had been her
called for
mom's.
months.
They put it together
Hello?
and poured in the cheese.
The familiar voice
then
on the other
cut up
line
pieces
almost
of meat
made
and
David hang
steamed
up.
some vegetables.
Hi, Mom.
Once everything was
David
ready,
could hear his
they
mother
turned
gasp.
off all the lights
He hadn't
and
called
lit a
since
few
Sarah
candles.
had passed away.
It had been a
and
Christmas
he'd
tradition
avoided taking
for
any
as
of
long
her
as
calls
Lily
as
could
well.
remember. Do you think
I was
Santa
wondering
will come,
if you were
Mom?
still planning
Patrick
dinner
asked.
for tonight.
That depends.
His mom's
Do
voice
you think
shook
you were
as
a
she
good
spoke.
boy this year?
You know
Lily
we
had
never
dreaded
miss.
their questions
You're
about Santa.
coming?
After all the
David closed his
expenses had
eyes
been
before
paid,
answering.
there was only enough
Yes,
for a
but
little
I can't
food
stay long.
for the next
I have
2
a job
days.
at the church, so I
After
need to be
that,
back.
She had no idea how
working
she
at
was
the
going to
church?
survive until
There was
she
a
could find
pause.
more than just the cleaning
This
jobs.
is David,
I was a
right?
good boy, and Mary was
Yes,
a good
Mom.
girl.
I'll be there
so
around 4.
He should come, right?
David hung up and
Patrick
climbed
dipped
out of
his
bed.
meat into the cheese
He'd need
and
to leave
swirled
soon
it
so
around.
he could grab gifts on
Mary
his way to his
rolled her
parents'
eyes.
house. He
You were
dressed
good
and ate
most
some
of the
breakfast,
time, but you
then
also
headed out.
threw that snowball at Mrs.
Just
Blakely
before
when
he got
she wasn't
inside
looking.
New York City, he
Did
stopped
not.
at a dealer and
I was
traded in
aiming
his
at her
old
son
beat-up
and
truck
missed.
for a newer
Patrick
version.
glared.
It hurt
Lily
to drive
rubbed
away
her
from the truck,
forehead. Even
but he
if it
wanted
was an
something
accident,
no one would
you need to be
recognize.
more careful where you throw
Once he
snowballs.
pulled into the parking lot of his
Patrick
favorite shopping
sniffled
center,
and whispered,
David made sure
"I
his hat
am
was
careful."
down low and his scarf covered
Lily
his
checked
mouth.
the pot of fondue,
The air
looking
was
for a
biting,
distraction.
so he fit right in
Oh,
with
we're
every
out.
other New
Time for the
Yorker on the
chocolate.
street.
She stood and cleaned
Shopping
the pot,
on Christmas Eve
letting
was
her
a
tears
nightmare,
fall as
but
the
David
water
had
poured
decided
into the sink.
sometime during the night
When the
that
pot
he
was
needed
clean,
to visit his
she
family,
wiped her eyes
and he
and
didn't
dried
want to
the
go
dish.
empty-handed. It was
Mary
fun
pulled out
picking
the
out
chocolates
gifts for
that a
them,
neighbor had
but
brought,
the lines
while
were
Patrick
long,
grabbed the
and
candies from
customers were
other
cranky.
neighbors.
They
He
may be
melted
taken
the
off his
chocolate
hat
and
It
ate
could have been
until
served
they were
pretty
too
quickly,
full to move.
but he didn't feel like
Lily
calling
soaked the
attention
bowl,
to himself.
and they went into the living room
As
to
David
watch
passed
a
a
movie.
window, he stopped to see
Lily
a
jerked
sculpture
awake
that
when the
sat
movie
in a
ended.
glass case.
She looked up
It
at
was
the
a
clock,
woman with her
surprised
arms
that
around
she'd
two
missed the
children.
sermon.
It
She
brought
shook
tears to his
Patrick
eyes.
and Mary awake.
He walked
Hey,
inside
we need
and
to
had
go.
it wrapped
I
up
promised
in
the
layers
pastor
of
we'd
paper.
come by tonight. She
By the
hurried
time
to
he
find
got
their
back to
coats
his truck,
and bundled
David's
them up.
arms were
Patrick
full of
rubbed
gifts
his
for
eyes.
family and
Do
for
we
a few
have to
people in
walk?
town as well.
Lily bit
He
her
loaded
lip.
up the back seat and
We have no
climbed in,
choice.
headed
Let's
for
hurry.
Sands
The
Point.
exercise will warm us
It
up.
took longer than normal
They
because
walked
of
to
the
the
traffic,
church,
and he
enjoying
pulled
the
in
light
behind the
snow
other
that
cars.
fell. It made the
It
town
looked like
she
David's
loved so
dad
much
had gone
more
all out with
picturesque.
Christmas lights again this
The
year.
congregation was
Every
thinning out
tree
as
and
they
bush
reached the
was
church,
covered in lights,
and Lily
a
hoped it
large
wasn't too
star
late to
sat on
talk to
top
the
of the
pastor.
house.
Seeing
David
David
sifted
made her
through
heart
the
jump
gifts
into
and
her
pulled
throat,
out the
and
ones
she
for
didn't
his
know
family.
what to say as she
The
passed
door
by
opened
him.
before he got to
His
the step,
smile
and
was
his mom
hopeful,
squealed.
but she
"You
just
did
moved on.
come. Oh,
As
David,
much
I'm
as she
so
wanted to
happy.
stop and
we have
say
the whole
hi.
family together
She
again."
missed spending time with
She
him.
hugged David and led him
Reverend Smith
inside.
stood at the front.
Dinner will
and
be
led
ready
them
in
to
a
his
few
office.
minutes. I didn't see
Sounds
you
great.
during my sermon. I'm sorry I didn't call
I'm
sooner.
sorry. We fell asleep.
David slipped
I'm
off
sure
his
it was
shoes and
wonderful.
took the gifts to the
Lily
tree.
smiled.
When David
Thank you.
turned, I'd like to
He
think
found
so.
his mom standing
The
there
pastor
with
motioned
tears
toward
in her
some
eyes.
papers. She held
read
out
through
her
your
arms,
request for
and David
assistance.
walked into them.
Unfortunately,
I'm just
there's not
glad
much
you're
we can
here.
do to
It's
help
been
you with
too
your home.
long, sweetie.
We just don't have enough
I know.
coming in
I'm
from
sorry.
tithes.
And he
It
was.
was incredibly
He
disappointing.
shouldn't have blocked them
but
out of
Lily
his life.
shouldn't have expected much.
David pulled away
She'd
and looked
seen
around.
the small crowds that
You've
came in every
repainted?
week.
It looks great.
It's okay. I'll
Your
find a way
dad
to
gets
pay.
so bored
I always
now that he's
do.
retired. He's
She
always
stood
changing
and ushered
something.
the kids out of the office.
Speaking of which,
She wanted to
you
get
should go find
outside
him
before
He's
the
in the
tears
study.
came. His
It
mom
looked as
headed
though
into
they'd
the
have to
kitchen,
find a
and
different
David
place
went
to
to find
live.
his dad. She just hoped
He
the
knocked
kids
on the
didn't
door to the
understand
study and poked his
anything
head
that
in.
had just happened.
Hey, Dad.
Maybe it was better this
David,
way.
When
They
Mom
could make
said
a
you were
fresh
coming,
start
I didn't
somewhere
want to get
else.
my hopes up.
They walked
He
out
stood and
into the
hugged
snow.
David tightly.
Race
It's
you
good
two,
to see you, son.
Lily called.
I'm glad
She
to
figured
be
if they
here.
were running, they
His
wouldn't
dad
be able to
lifted up
ask
the
questions.
newspaper on his desk. I've
Patrick
been
giggled
keeping
as
up
he
with you
took
through
off,
the press.
and Mary
well
ran
done
to
with
catch
the
up.
party. Lily
Thanks.
watched from behind and
The
laughed.
pride in his dad's
She
voice
reached
felt
the house
good.
and filled the pot
He'd
with
worked
water
hard
to
to
make
keep
hot
up with the
chocolate.
success his dad
The
had
kids
as
came
the
from the
president
other
of the
room,
company.
already wearing
Who is
pajamas.
this girl? She's beautiful,
Wow, you
David.
two were fast.
His dad
Okay,
motioned toward
drink
the
up
picture
so you
of
can
Lily.
find your stockings.
David cleared
Lily
his throat.
knew it sounded half-hearted.
She owns a
but the
diner near my
kids
house.
didn't seem to
Beautiful,
notice.
sweet, and
We
very
found them
protective
already.
of her family.
They're by the fireplace.
His dad sat back
Mary
down
took
in
a
his
sip
chair.
of her hot chocolate.
I take it things aren't
We
going
couldn't
well.
find the pin, so I
no,
just used tape.
She's uncomfortable with
Perfect.
getting help. And
Lily
apparently
kissed
I
their foreheads.
overstepped my bounds.
Let's say our prayers,
David picked up
and
the
then you can head
paperweight
to
on the
bed.
desk. Some
Patrick
people
said
love
the
money,
prayer, and
others
asked
are
for
scared by
Santa
it.
to come that night.
Be patient,
and to make his mom
she'll come
happy
back.
again. His dad winked.
He ended the prayer.
Let's go see if
and
dinner's
gave Lily
ready.
a hug before running
David
to his bed.
sighed as he followed his
Mary
dad to the
kissed
dining
Lily's
room.
cheek. If he
and
was
walked
told to be
behind
patient
Patrick.
one more time,
Lily sat on the couch
pasted
and
a
watched the
smile on
fire
his
until
face
the
as they
flame
sat
had died down.
David's
She went to
sister,
her room
Elena,
and pulled
and
out
her
some of the
husband were
candy
already
she set
seated
aside
with
for
their
man
son between them.
and put them
David's
in each
other
of the
sister,
stockings.
Julie, walked in with a
It
pot
wasn't
of
much,
potatoes,
but
followed
at
by
least
his
they
mom
had
with
something.
the turkey.
Lily
Three
went
other
to bed
kids
and
came
prayed
running
that
and
she'd
sat
find
down
a way
next
to
to
make
Julie.
things work out for her little
After his
family.
dad said
She
grace
would do
over the
her
food,
best to make Christmas
the volume
as
rose as
cheerful
everyone
for her
dished
little
potatoes
ones as
and
she
turkey
could,
onto their plates,
and then deal with the rest.
David stayed
after
quiet
that.
as he listened
Mommy,
to those
wake
around
up.
him.
He came. Santa
Julie
came.
tried to bring up Lily.
Patrick jumped
but
on
thankfully,
Lily's
David's
bed,
dad
waking her
stepped
up.
in and changed
His
the
cheeks
subject.
were red, and Lily
Julie
noticed
narrowed
a
her
chill
eyes,
to the air.
and David
She'd
knew she'd
forgotten
mention
to
it
stoke
again
the fire
later.
the night before.
He only hoped it was
I'll be
when
right
it
there.
was just the
I'm
two
going
of
to
them.
grab some firewood.
Once
We
dinner was
used it.
over, they
Patrick
sat down in the
shivered.
living room to open
What
gifts.
do you mean you used it?
David watched
I
as
thought
the
we had a
nieces
few
and
logs
nephew
left.
ripped through their presents
Lily
and
ran
took them
out to
into
the
a
porch.
corner to play.
But he was right.
He was
The
glad he'd
logs
chosen
were gone.
trains for them.
There were only a few
His mom
scraps
loved
of
the
bark
scarf he
left.
picked out,
She
and his
took
dad
them to the
received a
fireplace
ship in a
and
bottle
got the fire
to go on the
going.
shelf in his study.
Bring me any
His
paper
sister
or wood
got
you can
tickets
find.
to 3 Broadway
Patrick
shows
and
they've
Mary
been dying to
scrambled
see.
for paper,
I'm sorry you don't
pencils,
have
and
any
paper
gifts here,
towels
David.
to burn.
We
Patrick
had them all
dumped a few
mailed
of
to
his
you.
wood blocks into
His
the
mom
fire,
wrapped her scarf
but Lily
around her
held him
neck.
back from dumping the
It's
rest.
all right. I got
No
them
more.
yesterday.
Just
I
enough
should
to
have
make
brought
it
them with
until
me.
we leave for the church.
He didn't mention
have a
that
heater
he'd
there.
put them with Lily's
Never
gifts
mind that
and
Lily
couldn't
had
bring
no
himself to
idea
walk
what
into
she'd
that
do
room.
after that.
She
could no longer
I better
use the
take
space
off.
heaters
I need to
because
be
she
back in
couldn't
the church
afford the
soon.
electricity.
His mom
And she
stood
wasn't
and
about to
followed
ask
him out
David
to his
for
truck.
help.
Please
She
come
changed
visit
into
again
her
soon,
warmest
sweetie.
clothes
Don't
and
stay
thought
away so
longingly
long.
of the coat David had
David
let her
leaned
borrow.
down and kissed her cheek.
When she
I
went out
won't,
into the
I
living room,
promise.
she found Patrick and
Merry
Mary
Christmas.
unwrapping gifts.
If you'd like to come back for
Where
pie
did you
tomorrow
get
night,
those?
we'd love to have you.
Mary held up
She
a book
smiled
she'd
as he
gotten from
opened the
school
door.
a few months before.
I'll do
and
my
beamed.
best. Love you, Mom.
We're just pretending
He
to
started
open
the truck
presents.
and drove away.
Yep.
He
Look at
shouldn't
what
have
I
stayed
got.
away so long.
Patrick held up some blocks
The
and
traffic
an
was
old
still
truck that
bumper
was
to
missing a
bumper as he
wheel.
drove through New York.
Lily smiled,
And even with taking
but she
whatever
knew
shortcut
she was
he
losing
could,
the fight
he
to her
only
tears.
barely made it before the
That's
service started.
beautiful. Can you
He
two
walked
play
up
for
to
a
the
bit?
tower and played
I'm going to see
"Oh,
if we
Holy
can get
Night,"
some firewood from a
then
neighbor.
watched as people gathered for
Mary
the sermon.
jumped up.
It was
We
a
can come
beautiful
with you.
night as the
No,
snow
you
fell
just
lightly
stay here next
and
to
the
the fire,
Christmas
okay?
lights
I'll be
glowed
right
from
back.
all the houses. Lily left the
David
house and
made his
finally
way
allowed
downstairs
herself
and
to
slipped
cry.
into
a pew in
She
front of the
walked down
chapel.
the sidewalk, wiping away
Reverend
the
Smith
tears.
delivered a beautiful
wasn't
sermon
fair
on the
that her
Nativity.
children had no
then the
Christmas.
choir sang several Christmas
She
hymns.
prayed so
They
hard for a
invited
way
the
to help them,
congregation to join
for a
in
way
before
to
the
keep
meeting
her
was
diner
over
going,
and people began
and
to
for
leave.
so many other things.
David waited until
But
most
nothing
of the
had
people were
happened.
gone before he
Debt
stood
still
and
had to
headed
be
for
paid,
the back door.
And this morning,
He
they had to
stopped
burn
short
toys
when
just
Lily
to have
walked
a
in.
fire in the fireplace.
Hi, Merry Christmas.
Lily stopped when she heard
smiled
a
and
melody
moved to the
she'd
side
heard
so
so
she
many
could get
times
by.
before.
She walked
It was
past,
the church bells.
and Patrick looked back
She
to
hadn't
smile at him.
expected them for another
David
hour.
waved and walked
Ave
away.
Maria was
His
followed
heart
by
beat
Amazing
rapidly
Grace.
as he left the
And
church
as she
and
walked
drove
closer,
home.
a new
Seeing
melody Lily had thrown his peace into turmoil for a new beginning. Maybe going back
When
to
the
have
church
dinner
tower
with his
was
family
in view,
on Christmas, Lily
was a good
stared
idea.
up at the bells. No chance
they
of his
played,
heart breaking
"I heard
any
the
more
bells on
than
Christmas
it already
Day."
was. David pulled down on the ropes and made each of the bells
About the
play the
author.
correct tune. When the song was
Jacqueline
done,
is an
he
Idaho
looked down
farm
and
girl
caught
who
her
grew
eye.
up loving to read.
He waved and grinned.
She developed a love for
and
writing
it
at a
struck
young age
Lily
and published her
that
first
one
book
man
in
had
2013.
answered every prayer
She met her
she'd said.
husband Steve.
She
at
had been so
BYU,
blinded by her pride,
and they have 6
she'd
happy,
missed it.
crazy children.
She
who
pushed her
encourage
way
her
into
to
the
keep
church
writing.
and ran through the
After
chapel,
owning a
throwing an
bookstore and running
apology
away
at
to have
Reverend
adventures
Smith
in
as she
Australia.
kept going.
They
She
settled
ran
back
up the
down
stairs
in their
and
home
into
in Utah.
David's arms.
Jacqueline now
He held
spends
her
her
tightly,
days herding
not
her
asking
kids
what
to
was
various
wrong,
activities
but just
and
being
trying to
there for
remember
her.
what she was supposed to do next.
When she finally pulled
her books
away,
include the
he
Silver
wiped her
Script
tears.
series, Cottonwood
"Merry
Ranch,
Christmas to you,
Brides of
too,"
Golden Valley,
David laughed.
and the Love on the Run series.
"What are you doing up here? And
When
where are
she's
the
not
kids?"
writing romance, she's
"Oh,
chasing
the kids. I left
playing
them. I'll be
games,
back."
and dreaming
Lily
of
tried
running
to
away
clear
to
her head
Ireland.
as she ran through the church. "Lily, wait up," David called. This has been Lily didn't stop running
Christmas
until she
worth
was nearly
billions.
home and needed to
Written
stop
by
to catch
Jacqueline
her breath.
Hardy.
She couldn't
Narrated
believe she'd
by
left her
P.J.
kids for that
Wood.
long. She burst through the door and found Mary and Patrick still by the fire, playing with the toys they'd unwrapped. "There you are. Get your coats and come with me." Lily bent over, still gasping for air. "Where are we going?" Mary asked. She grabbed her coat off the couch and put it on. Lily shook her head and held up a finger. "One sec." A knock came at the door, and Lily answered it. David stood there, holding a few gifts in his hands. She let him in and couldn't stop grinning. "I tried to catch you so you wouldn't have to run all the way home, but you were too fast. I had these in my car, but I didn't know if you'd let me deliver them. When you came to the church, I thought maybe—" He looked between the kids and then at the fire. "Why is it so cold in here?" Lily blushed. "No firewood. We were hoping to head to the church to get some warmth, but then I got sidetracked." "Well, then, you can all just head over to my house instead. How does that sound?" He looked up at Lily. "If that's okay with you." "Of course." Lily grabbed her canister of hot chocolate and followed David outside. "What happened to your other truck?" David opened the door for her. It was too conspicuous. Lily shook her head and climbed in, thankful for the turn of events. She smiled at the church as they drove past, thinking of the realization she'd had that morning. Patrick and Mary ran inside David's house ahead of Lily and David. They stood in front of the Christmas tree and stared in awe at the gifts beneath it. David started a fire in the fireplace, while Lily got hot chocolate and toast ready for breakfast. Once they had eaten, the kids took turns opening gifts. "Oh, man, just what I always wanted." Patrick held up a football. "Thank you." "You're welcome. We'll have to go out and practice once we're done with gifts." David handed Mary hers. Mary opened the present to find a doll and a few sets of clothes for it. She touched the hair in awe. "It looks just like me." "That's what I thought, too." David handed Lily a gift. "I might have gone a little overboard on yours." Lily opened the box to find a thick coat with a fur lining. There were gloves and a scarf to go with it. "Thank you." "Wait, there's one more." He handed her another box, his eyes dancing. Lily opened it and pulled out a delicate sculpture. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked up at David. "It's beautiful. It's called A Mother's Love, and when I saw it, I knew it needed to be yours. I've never seen someone protect their children so fiercely." "Thank you." Lily leaned forward and kissed David, making her kids squeal in delight. She pulled away and gathered up all the wrapping. "What about you?" Patrick asked. "Where's your present?" David laughed. "I already opened presents from my family. I got socks and a sweater, perfect for the winter, and I got you guys. There's not much more I could want. Although," he paused, "there might be one more thing." Lily watched as David got up and left the room. She finished cleaning up the wrapping paper just as he walked back in with an envelope. "I debated showing you this, but here's a Christmas gift to all of us. Who wants to open it?" David held it up in the air. He laughed when both Mary and Patrick raised their hands and bounced up and down. No one else does, so I guess I will." David slowly opened up the envelope and pulled out a sheet of paper. He pretended to read it before handing it off to Lily. She scanned the letter, her eyes growing bigger. as she got to the bottom. The person who had put an offer on the diner was David, and his offer was over double what she'd asked. "I can't let you lose the diner, but this way, we can do it together. That is, if you'll allow me to be a part of your life." His eyes held a spark of hope as he studied her face. Lily threw her arms around his neck, her heart nearly bursting with joy. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The end.